City County Planning Commission into order for our February 17th, 2022 meeting. Monica, if you would call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Blackburn?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark? Commissioner Drain? Commissioner Gay? Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Ritchie? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Starks?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert? Yes, ma'am. Chair Warren?
And thank you, Monica. Commissioners, you have the minutes of our February the 3rd meeting in your packets. Are there any questions? Would call for a motion, please.
Make a motion, we approve.
Second.
Commissioner Starks?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert? Commissioner Blackburn?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark? I'm sorry. Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Ritchie? Yes, ma'am. Chair Warren?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Monica. Ham?
Mr. Warren, good evening. I request that
Good evening.
You order that the record include the statutory and regulatory provisions governing tonight's hearings. Also, please, the Commission's entire file for each application on tonight's docket and the qualifications for each staff witness. Finally, I'd ask that you administer the oath to those witnesses.
Swear to tell the truth? Yes, sir. Thank you very much. We have a couple of housekeeping items tonight before we get into our meeting. Megan, you have our budget for fiscal year 2022, second quarter, please.
Hi, everyone. I've got a quick second quarter budget review for you. I think everybody should have a copy of the budget in their packet. And the easiest way for us just to do a review on this is to look at the year-to-date of the budget percentage and just to go down that column. Quickly, we'll look at total income. We're at 57.5%. Since we're at halfway through the year, that's great. That's a little ahead of where we thought we would be. Total personnel, if you skip down to the last line there, we're at 48.6% so far for this fiscal year, which is exactly where we want to be. And if you look over at the second page, our total office expenses were at 44%. MPO percentage, we're only at 5.2%. That always catches up with us in the last 2 quarters of the year. And then contractual, we're doing well. We're at 53.5%, but just a little explanation of why we're a little high on that one is we have an insurance expense that we only pay 1 time per year, and we've already paid it. So that skews that number just a little bit. If we look at travel, we're at 26.1%. Total expenditures, we're at 47.5%. And then if we skip down and look at our capital expenditures, we're doing well with everything there. We've only spent $6,500 in capital expenditures so far this year. Then if we flip over to the third page, we're going to look at our operating account balance. $509,000 is what we had at the end of December in our operating account, and in our surety account we had $2.2 million in that. That's pretty much everything I've got as a quick budget review. Does anybody have questions on that?
Commissioners, any questions for Megan?
Right.
Thank you all for all you do and keeping our expenses. You do a great job.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is purchase of a new.
Chair Warren, I'm sorry, I believe we need a motion on that, if we could get one.
Excuse me.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Volkert?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Blackburn?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Ritchie? Commissioner Starks?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Warren?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Megan. I mean, Monica, Megan. right.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right. Ben, you have our,
I actually have it.
Okay,
So
excuse
the
me.
next item on the agenda is for the purchase of a new vehicle. I think most of you guys know this, but we have a 2002 Chevy Blazer that is on its last leg. Actually, it's down. It's lost the battle. We already have it in our budget to purchase a new vehicle to replace that this year. And we would like to purchase a 2022 Ford Explorer. We have a memo in your budget that shows the quote that we have received. That is state pricing, so that's the cheapest that we're going to get it. And then the other item is to dispose of the Chevy Blazer.
The only question I have is there a reason we did not buy local?
For state pricing, Paul Miller Ford is who does state pricing. If we were to buy local, we would have to go through the whole bid process.
But just to make sure I understand, our local, whoever it is, none of the local ones are approved for state pricing, just
Correct.
this.
Yes.
Make a motion, we approve the vehicle purchase.
second? Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Blackburn,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Ritchie, Commissioner Starks,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. The motion approved. Thank you. You have your subdivision and site development plans in the packets that were mailed to you, Commissioners. Are there any questions? All right. And then you have a revised agenda at your desk. We had, in the packets that were mailed to you, there were 3 credit and performance bond changes, and the revised agenda shows 4. Are there any questions regarding these credit and performance bonds? Then they don't need a motion. Thank you very much. Oh, golly. All right, excuse me. We need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Ritchie, Commissioner Starks,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert, Commissioner Blackburn,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. We appreciate everybody being here tonight for this public hearing. And you see on the screen, on the wall, our procedures of how we allow people time to speak. We want everybody to have their voices heard, but these are the procedures we follow, and if it goes over, then we will have to adjust. Everybody understand that? Okay, thank you very much. Our first public hearing tonight is 2022-01 FLUM, Bajari Swami LLC, care of Resin Kumar Patel, has filed an application for a future land use map on tracts of land containing approximately 18.87 acres located at 8629 and 8679 Nashville Road, for mixed-use residential and low-density residential to mixed-use residential. So all of our members will be voting on this, and if this FLUM is approved, then we will go to item number 2, 2022-05Z County. Same applicants have filed an application to rezone these tracts of land containing approximately 18.87 acres located at 8629 and 8679 Nashville Road from RE residential state to general business and RS1C single-family residential with a general development plan. And our 4 county and city commissioners will be voting on that. Mr. Jones?
Very much, Chair Warren. We had a pre-app on December 1st for the property you see here outlined in yellow, of which the zoning is RE. The existing land use is agriculture, and the future land use map again shows mixed-use residential and low-density residential. It is, again, that FLUM for nearly 19 acres to go from low and mixed to just mixed residential, and then to rezone from RE to general business for roughly 3 acres of the tract, and then 15.5 acres to go to RS1C to develop 86 single-family units, including twin homes, single-family units, and various commercial uses. If you'll flip over to your second page, you'll see the considerations for the future land use map. The applicants did submit a short narrative at the bottom that I can cite if you all want, that covers the considerations for amending the future land use map. If you'll flip over to your next page, we've got the site characteristics review. I'm not going to go over any of these in great detail, but I will highlight a few things that the applicants, despite the fact that 2 of the homes that are proposing to be demolished are not historic homes, they still committed to donating those materials to the Habitat Restore, and they did commit to an additional setback adjacent to the South Glen Gable subdivision at the rear, and I'll touch on that more in the DPCs. They agreed to coordinate fire hydrant placement with the Woodburn Volunteer Fire Department. This property is within 2,000 feet of public sanitary sewer, and if the development goes forward, it will have to connect. And then under natural features, you'll note that in DPCs 5 and 6 for the RS1C portion, they committed to tree preservation and sinkhole mitigation, but they did not make the same commitments to that in the GB portion. Looking on down at site design and compatibility review, again, I can go over any of these in more detail, but we'll highlight a couple things. Signage, the applicants did commit to restrictions on signage in DPC number 4 for the GB portion. Looking down at landscaping and screening, under DPC number 2 for the RS1C portion, there was an additional commitment there that I'll touch on more in a moment, and the same for the proposed open space. And then looking on down at the traffic impact study, you'll see the considerations there. TIS was not required by KYTC or Bowling Green Public Works in lieu of the following improvements that you see listed below. Those are outlined in DPC number 8 for the RS1C portion, number 1 for the GB portion, and for brevity, I will just touch on those as I read these development plan conditions in a moment. So the applicants then submitted, again looking down at the DPCs, 2 different sets of development plan conditions. And the first one I will read through is for the RS1C portion to the rear of the property, or the left as you kind of look at it on your map there. Number 1 deals with total number of single-family residences not exceeding 86. Number 2 deals with the installation of a privacy fence, an increased amount of open space, and an increased landscape buffer, and that no structure shall be allowed within 60 feet of the property line common with South Glen Gable subdivision. Number 3 deals with minimum square footage, which would be 1,200 for this, and the minimum of a 1-car attached garage. It addresses facades, building materials, and that vinyl shall be used in soffits only, and that all foundations shall be brick or stone with no split face or plain face block. Number 4 deals with utility placement. Number 5 deals with the preservation of healthy and mature trees in areas that will not be in the way of building envelopes, parking areas, etc. Number 6 deals with sinkhole mitigation. Number 7 deals with sidewalks being installed on both sides of the street. I didn't touch on that a moment ago, but it's only required on one, but the applicants did commit to supplying them on both. And then also the uniformity of the street lights. Number 8 deals with the development being served by internal streets and the installation of stub streets to the properties to the north and south. Number 9 deals with the development of a homeowners association and what they shall be responsible to maintain. Number 10 deals with the placement of fire hydrants. Number 11 deals with that aforementioned salvageable material requirement for the Habitat for Humanity Restore. for those existing homes that are being demolished. And then number 12 deals with development plan condition number 3 becoming no longer a development plan condition once it can become a plat restriction or a private restriction. So that's it for the RS1C portion. Looking on down below that, you'll see development plan conditions separate for the GB portion. A lot of them are similar, but there are some differences. Number 1 deals with the entrance to the development from US 31W aligning with the entrance of Stewart Farms, and that there shall all lots shall have a shared right-in, right-out onto US 31W. That access onto Nashville Road shall have dedicated right and left turn lanes, which will be installed in coordination with the Warren County Public Works. Signal warrant analysis may be required if commercial uses warrant such analysis, and direct access to Nashville Road shall be limited to one shared access point that's right in, right out only, as depicted on the preliminary development plan, with those stub streets again to be installed to the properties to the north and south. Number 2 deals with maximum building height, which would be 2 stories. The exteriors of all structures, again here vinyl shall be utilized in soffits only. That foundation material shall be brick or stone with no plain or split face block. Number 3 deals with utility placement. Number 4 with freestanding signage, and that it shall not exceed 20 feet in height or 100 feet in total square feet in sign face, and then it shall be monument style. Number 5 deals with prohibited uses. Number 6 deals with fire hydrant placement. Number 7 deals with the donation of salvageable materials. And that is it for the DBCs for that GB portion as well. Looking on down at your Focus 2030 category review, we've got several items. The ones that comply or may comply, I'm not going to spend much time going over those, but I will highlight a couple of them that the proposal may comply with LU 2.1.4, PR 1.7, and NCR 1.1.6 because the applicants did commit in DPC number 5 to tree preservation, and DPC number 2 additional landscape buffer, again for that RS1C portion, but that the applicants did not address tree preservation in the GB portion of the development. And then looking on down, you'll see the proposal partially complies with NCR 1.1 and 1.3, as the applicants provided considerations for sinkholes in DPC number 6 for the RS1C portion, but did not address sinkholes for the GB portion. Flipping on back to page 1, we'll wrap it up with our points to consider. The FLUM categories are low density and mixed use, and if the application is successful to shift it entirely to mixed use residential, then the proposed zonings would comply. The application does comply with the majority of site characteristics review criteria, with again those exceptions regarding existing vegetation, sinkhole mitigation, and donation of salvageable materials for the existing residents for the GB portion of the development. The proposal complies with the majority of review criteria for site design and meets the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance, and the Planning Commission, of course, should determine if the proposal is compatible with the surrounding area. That's all I've got for the staff report, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Commissioners, any questions for Zach?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Zach, has the developer talked about what types of commercial uses possibly are going in?
I don't believe the developer had specified to us exactly what they would be. Of course, they outlined those prohibited uses, so it won't be any of those, okay. But they may be able to speak more to any future plans.
All right, thank you.
So Zach, get me oriented. I want to make sure I understand. There's already a subdivision out there that has, let's call it commercial or GB, closest to Nashville Road. This will be a similar layout, so the GB is adjacent to Nashville Road, and then behind that is the RE?
Yes, that is correct. If you can, I don't have the laser pointer. Maybe one of them has it on the table. You can, Ben can kind of point and show you where that GB portion is going there on the front.
It's the shaded portion that we
yes,
see there.
The shaded
okay.
portion.
All right, very good. And then the last question is regarding the sinkhole mitigation. In the development plan conditions, I think what you stated was they specified in the development plan conditions for the RE portion, but not the GB. Did I understand that correctly?
RS1C, yes.
Okay. And so another way to say that is, where would they be missing, or where are they not stated?
In that shaded portion that's right there along Nashville Road.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Zach, my question would be is what does staff think about this change and going to this kind of density?
You talking about for the residential density? It complies with the mixed-use residential category. It falls in line with the density range. You can see that on page 3 of your staff report, that the densities in the area range from 0.09 dwelling units per acre to 10.04, and this is right there in the middle at 5.51.
I would also add that there's a buffer and open space in addition to what the zoning or any zoning ordinance statute would require, and it's actually bigger than we normally see to buffering the existing neighborhoods.
And the fence is just goes along the back of the property?
I believe that is correct. The property line common with South Glen Gables, yes.
Okay.
Chris, any other questions? Any other questions, commissioners? Thank you, Zach, very much. Is the applicant or their representative here tonight?
Evening, Chair Warner, Chris Davenport, and I think you'll want to swear me in. 921 College Street, and I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you, Chris.
I represent Mr. Cal Patel. Mr. Patel, will you raise your hand, please? He is the representative of the applicant, and really what I wanted to stress here are the same questions that Commissioner Volkert just had and the comment that Mr. Peterson just gave. I'll start off by saying that we sometimes talk about split zoned property. This property is actually split flumed, if I could use that term. So what we're asking is that the back portion of the property get the same flume designation as the front portion. And to Mr. Stark's question, the restrictions that we have as far as uses for the commercial component, we have mirrored the restrictions that were on the other GB properties in the area. So the most immediate one would be Stewart Farms, which is right across the street, which if this is successful, our entranceway will align with Stewart Farms. So Stewart Farms has GB frontage, which is what we're proposing. I would say that the first thing you would do if you're trying to think about what uses are not allowed is you would go to, and I don't have it in front of me, but you would go to your table. And the first thing I would notice, not HB. So HB is the more intensive commercial use, the phrase I would use. HB would not be allowed in mixed-use residential. So HB's off the table, even with the flume. GB is less intense, and then kind of the way the staff asks us to go about it, instead of saying usually what we want to do, and I'll tell you, these properties will be marketed. So there are not tenants currently waiting in the wings. So the properties will be marketed. So what staff usually ask us to do is prohibit certain uses. So if you look at the GB table, they usually suggest getting rid of some of those. And in this case, the suggestion was to mirror our restrictions with what's already restricted in the area. So that's what we try to do in our DPC relative to the GB. So, for instance, we prohibited in DPC number, I figured staff would already be telling me this. Number 5, fuel pumps, automobile sales, pawn shops, commercial parking lot, telecommunications tower, vehicle sales, vehicle repair, group living, and bar lounge. That doesn't mean that every other commercial use is allowed, because many commercial uses would only be allowed in HB. So we wouldn't be allowed to do those either. What's left is what's in the table under GB.
Does that mirror pretty much what's across the street and what's prohibited?
I believe I stole Stewart Farms DPCs. So across the street, what we're talking about is GB. And also across the street, Stewart Farms has a multifamily component and it has a single-family component. And so one of the densities that the staff compared this project to, I think we're at 5.5. Stewart Farms, which is right across the street, is at 5.6. And do we have the pointer that I could borrow? Thank you. And so the subject is in the red. The Stewart Farms that's at 5.6 is this area here. But what I kind of want to point out to you all is that the 5.6 density is the RS, I believe, C, if not D, component of Stewart Farms. Stewart Farms also has a multifamily component immediately across the street that's not in your density calculation because it's technically it's multifamily, but it's still a residential development. I don't know the density of that portion, but it will far exceed the 10 that's in your chart. So, I mean, obviously we believe our development is very complementary to the Stewart Farm development. In fact, we do not have the multifamily component. So all of this request is single family. Sometimes that gets a little bit lost in translation because these are twin homes. Now, I would call that single family attached homes. They are on 0 lot lines. There are individual lots. They're deeded individually. It's a single family use restriction. The other thing I would say is that obviously when my client set out to propose this development, and Ben touched upon this, I guess I will compliment my client, or I'll pat him on the back. This effort here I think is significant, and I don't think it should be understated. And let me first say from the get-go that if you ask me hypothetically, do I think we should buffer single-family uses from single-family uses? This board's probably heard me say before, I don't think so. You know, these homes are single-family homes. They are a different product, but it's not multifamily. And the ordinance doesn't really require us to buffer the same use. But my client, understanding what some of the concerns or complaints might be, has agreed to this extensive open space area. So you'll see that, I think, in DPC number 2. It includes landscaping. It also includes basically these restrictions. The way I tried to write the restriction is no lot, no home, or no structure, excuse me, will be constructed within 60 feet of this property line. I'll tell you on Mr. Caldwell's concept, 60 feet is actually the back of these lots. So in this, I think we have 10-foot minimum rear setbacks. In reality, there'll be at least 70 feet when you take those two criteria and put them together. And that's at the most narrow point. This distance is significantly greater down here. So again, do I feel like, do we need to make a habit of buffering single-family use from single-family use? No. But I'll give my client credit. They were willing to do that in this case, which significantly lowers the amount of lots that could be put on the property. Of course, I think they also kind of get some credit in your ordinance for increasing open space. This will be a HOA development. The HOA will maintain that area, and I'm sure the HOA will take the benefit for themselves for recreational or green space. That's the goal. That's really what I wanted to highlight, folks. The only thing I'll say is that as far as the product, vinyl and soffits only, brick, stone foundations. I think some of the things that you all look for in some of the higher design elements. So I'm happy to answer any questions you all have.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Davenport?
Davenport, I have a question. In our review here, it says 86 single-family units to include twin homes. And then on the staff review, it indicates the applicants are proposing to develop the properties with 86 twin homes. Clarification purposes, are all the homes twin homes?
That's our intention.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
I'll say this. If they decide to do other not twin homes, technically that would be allowed here, but their unit count's going to go down significantly because of the setback requirements. So from a build the church for Easter perspective, you know it will not be more dense or more built out than what we're showing you on our concept. and the way they've calculated their density for you.
Thank you.
So Chris, just to follow and make sure I understand, we have 86 lots here. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay.
If you looked at, if this is built out this way, as we anticipate, and you look down at it from above, you'd see 44 roof lines.
Because there's a 0 lot line on
There'll be
one side
There'll
of,
be a lot line, a property line going through the middle of those 43, 43 roof lines.
okay, and I'm going to jump around here just a little bit. Let's go back to the landscape buffer.
Yes, sir.
You said the HOA will maintain it, is that accurate?
That's one of the conditions.
All right, and will there be retention on it?
There has to be retention somewhere. And Jace could speak to that possibly, I think. I mean, I can't really read it, Jace. I suspect this may be preliminarily some retention as well. I'll let you speak to that. You've got the right degree.
Jace Caldwell, Van Meter and Slavey, 1015 Shive Lane.
You swear to tell the truth?
Yes, sir. I did, when we were talking about the green space requirement, some of using the 60 feet was so that I had some to use for that drainage area. But the intention was to make sure we were going to have 60-foot buffer and then a little bit left over possibly for drainage. I will tell you, and you can't really see currently right there is a drainage area, and I will probably maintain some sort of drainage area right there. And then, of course, this entire lot right here is for a drainage area. And if you go back to that last, you can see this is currently all a drainage area. It's very shallow, and it was platted when they did that development originally. I didn't do all the calculations, but enough to know that it was going to be somewhat possible to fit it in this area.
So that first lot, as you come in, that you anticipate that would be the slightly more steeped banked retention area, and then the other one may have some.
Yes.
If for some reason you get into some calculation differences there.
Correct.
All right, very good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I think also, Mr. Graham, we may well have some to the north or to the top also, given that low area up there too.
Right.
Or the general business?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because y'all didn't specify that in the plan. The water retention for general business, that was one of the staff questions.
It'd probably be shared.
Yeah, I think what the staff commented, Commissioner Warren, was the lack of the sinkhole mitigation. And what most likely happened there is I started off with one set, and as I started to segregate these, I mean, we're happy to agree to that, the exact same restriction.
So there's nothing, you didn't identify something there, it's just an oversight possibly.
Correct. And frankly, I don't, typically my and I'll go back, I probably stole Stewart Farms, and if I had to bet, Stewart Farms doesn't have sinkhole mitigation in it, if I were gonna really be a betting person.
Yeah, that's fine.
We typically see those more in our larger development.
Sure.
DPCs, but we're happy to include that.
If you don't have objection, do you mind including that?
The identical sinkhole,
in the DPC, is it 6 on mine? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
6 will be the new number 8 in the GB. Mr. Patel, would you come up, please? Commissioner Warren's going to swear you in.
Would you state your name
First name is Ralpesh, last name is Patel.
and your address?
2200 Stonehenge Avenue, 42101.
Swear to tell the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Patel, I'm going to read a condition for you, and then at the end of it, I'm going to ask you if you agree to that, okay? And the condition for the GB would be that sinkhole shall be mitigated to standards approved by the Warren County Public Works Department.
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Davenport? Thank you. Thank you very much. In the audience tonight, is there opposition to this request? or comments? Okay. Then, Commissioners, I would ask for a motion, please, to move to amend the FLUM, and if so passed, would ask for a suggestion to the zoning map amendment.
Make a motion to approve the proposed future land use map amendment, docket number 2021-01 FLUM, based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. The proposed FLUM amendment has met the directive to amend the FLUM as outlined in LU 1.1.4 in the comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Ritchie. Commissioner Starks,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert, Commissioner Blackburn,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. Call for a motion for the proposed zoning map amendment.
Make a motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and conditioned upon the general development plan, docket number 2022-05Z County, based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. The proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Starks,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert, Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. The motion approved and goes to Warren County Fiscal Court. Our next item tonight is 2022-03 FLUM. Elijah Properties, LLC, care of David Whitty, have filed an application for a future land use map amendment on tracts of land containing approximately 3/4 of an acre located at 0 Smallhouse Road, formerly 1443 Smallhouse Road, and 1411 Smallhouse Road for moderate density residential to high density residential. If so approved, the next item would be 2022-07ZBG Elijah Properties, LLC, care of David Whitty, have filed an application to rezone tracts of land containing approximately 3/4 of an acre located at 0 Smallhouse Road, formerly 1443 Smallhouse Road, and 1411 Smallhouse Road from RM3 Townhouse Multifamily Residential to RM4 Multifamily Residential with a general development plan. Ms. Hurt?
Thank you, Chair Warren. As you mentioned, this application includes several properties on Smallhouse Road. The current zoning is RM3 with a request to rezone the properties to RM4 if the future land use map amendment is approved from its current designation of moderate density residential to high density residential. The proposed number of units for the development is 16. This is the preliminary site plan here on the screen. Looking at page 2 of your staff report, you will see a reference to LU 1.1.4 from the comprehensive plan. This outlines the procedures and criteria for amending the future land use map. You'll see the italicized text about halfway down. That was the supporting information that was submitted by the applicant in order to justify amending the future land use map. And based on this information, staff did have a few points to consider. Those are outlined on the bottom of page 2. First is that the proposed development, if I go back to the land use map here, the proposed development has frontage on Smallhouse Road, roughly 115 linear feet across from a multifamily use, which is Covington Oaks. That's the red shaded property here. The primary entrance for Covington Oaks is located on Scottsville Road. The remaining roughly 675 linear feet of the development boundary is adjacent to a single-family residential property. Second, the preliminary development plan, I'll jump back to that was submitted, depicts what appears to be a private travelway, not a public street. Staff suggested that the applicants clarify how a private travelway connecting to public rights-of-way will improve current traffic flow. I'm going to jump to the density map for the next point to consider. Under the current RM3 zoning, the applicants could construct 13 units on the property, resulting in a density of 17.13 dwelling units per acre. This exceeds the density for Covington Oaks, which is 15.68 dwelling units per acre, and what is identified as potentially compatible in the current future land use designation of moderate density residential. This allows a density maximum up to 13 dwelling units per acre. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposed future land use map amendment and zone change to RM4 to achieve a density of 21.08 dwelling units per acre is compatible with the surrounding area. And last, there are 2 8-plex buildings depicted on the preliminary development plan. However, there is no requirement in the application that limits the maximum number of units per building to 8. Looking at page 3, I'll just touch on one thing in the site characteristics review section. The development plan conditions require that the buildings be in line with other residences along Smallhouse Road. However, the proposed setback shown on the preliminary development plan does not meet this requirement. And then I will go through the development plan conditions on page 4. Number 1 requires that new utility lines be located underground. 2, no building shall exceed 2 stories in height. 3, the exteriors of all structures shall be brick, stone, cement, board, or other modern masonry material. No plain or split-face block shall be utilized. The exteriors of the structures on the premise shall be uniform architecturally and by materials. There would be no more than 2 exterior treatments. 4, the development shall not exceed 16 units. 5, the property will be developed with uniform parking lot lighting. 6, there shall be no more than 1 managing entity for the development. 7, the development shall have a minimum of 20% open space and will be developed with internal sidewalks that will have a connection to the existing sidewalk along Enterprise Court. I will point something out about that condition here in just a second. Number 8, the entrances will be coordinated with the City of Bowling Green prior to submitting for a building permit. Entrances will be installed per the City of Bowling Green standards. 9, building orientation shall have an appearance of a front facade facing Smallhouse Road and have the building in line with other residences along Smallhouse Road. 10, parking shall be to the side of the building structures and not between the building structures and Smallhouse Road. And last, all existing healthy trees along the property lines, 5-inch caliper and greater as measured 12 inches above the ground, will not be removed unless otherwise requested by an agency having authority. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposed development plan conditions adequately address the applicable Focus 2030 comprehensive plan items included in your staff report and if the proposal is compatible with the area. Staff suggested that the applicants clarify what is meant by no more than 2 exterior treatments in DPC number 2, and also requested that the applicants revise DPC number 7 as there are no sidewalks depicted on the preliminary development plan, nor are there any sidewalks along Smallhouse Road. Also, the development is not located in proximity to Enterprise Court. These items were not addressed in the revised development plan conditions that were submitted to staff. And I had mentioned previously that development plan condition 9 requires the buildings to be in line with other residences along Smallhouse Road. However, the proposed setback on the preliminary development plan does not meet this requirement. We have several items from the Focus 2030 comprehensive plan listed on page 5 for your review. I am not going to go through all of those, but I will be happy to circle back and go through any of those in detail if needed. With that, I will wrap up with a couple of our points to consider on page 1. We already touched on several items regarding the future land use map amendment on page 2, so I'm not going to touch on that again. But we will look at the second and third item. One of those being that the proposed development complies with some of the site characteristics review criteria and some of the review criteria for site design, with considerations noted regarding the proposed use, density, building height, bulk of buildings, proposed front building setback, and the existing historic residence. And then last, the Planning Commission should determine if the proposed development is compatible and if it will complement the existing uses, character, and pattern of development in the surrounding area. That is all I have for the staff report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Hurt?
Rachel, like I asked in the last one, what is the staff's feeling on this application?
Well, as with any application, during the pre-application meeting, we normally advise the applicant of the current future land use map and suggest conforming to that designation and density and zoning. So we did discuss that during the pre-application meeting, but the applicant did want to move forward with the application that's before you this evening.
Ms. Hurd, I have a couple of questions. A couple of your recommendations that you all recommended to them, the preliminary setback, applicants clarify how a private travel way connecting two public rights-of-way improve current traffic flow, and there was a couple of other things. They did not address those?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to ask it more specifically. On a few occasions, you guys have pulled us aside and said, okay, we've got this new RM4 designation, but that needs to be used sparingly. That's a paraphrase on my part. Is this a sparingly use?
I don't know if I completely understand your question.
So you have occasionally asked us to use the RM4 designation judiciously. Don't, every application, go ahead.
I think I know in what you're referring to. So the context that we have brought awareness to that.
There you go.
If
Thank you
will,
for the, I was searching for the right word.
Is in the context when we have an application request to go to RM4 with variances to grant even further relief to potentially allow even more. That was the context of those statements. We do not have variances in this case. It's more in the relation of the future land use map amendment along with the request. Is it appropriate for this particular area?
Okay, so in this instance, we should be considering, of course, density. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment, but also does the one of the points to consider was do these structures, how did you phrase it? Do they complement the existing structures, or do they fit in with the existing structures? We don't have any elevations, so how do we know that?
Well, I will say that the applicants did supply some photos, I think, of buildings in a similar development, and they may be able to touch on that here in just a little bit.
Just two final questions. You said that you said that the concept plan has 2 8-plexes, I think. Yes. But it did not designate how many? Did I misunderstand something?
So in RM3, which is the current zoning of the property, under the ordinance, you're limited to no more than 8 units per building. In RM4, which is what the proposed zone is, there's no limit on the number of units per building. So while there are only 8 per building shown here, there's no requirement under the proposed development plan that ensures that no more than 8 units per building would be constructed.
So could we handle that with the DCP?
You could, if the applicants were agreeable.
DPC, I should say, has changed 4.
If the applicants were agreeable to that, then yes, you could limit that in the development plan conditions.
And now, somewhere they already have something that says no more than 16 units, though. Did I misread that?
No, they do, but it needs to probably be changed to say no building should be more than 8 units.
Got it. All right.
Well, you would, if you want to limit the development to 16, then you would have an additional restriction for no more than 8 units per building. Yep.
Okay.
Last one is, I guess we're going to ask the developer about these 2, what term did they use, these 2 design and then will these be managed by a single entity, or do we know?
There is a development plan
It does say,
condition that
yes.
does require that.
Got it.
I forget which number that is, number 6.
All right. Questions? Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions for Ms. Hurd? Thank you, Rachel, very much. Is the applicant here or their representative, or the applicants are here, but a representative for the applicant?
after the PowerPoint, I can help you do that too.
Thank you. Mark Alcott, 1340 College Street, counsel for the applicant. I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
Chair Warren, Commissioners, this is a FLUM amendment, and as I know, the entire board has to vote on that, and that's because the idea is that we stay within the FLUM within all reason. But this is a minor change to the FLUM amendment for purpose of adding 3 units. The current RM3 allows up to 13 units on this particular with no zone change in regard to this development plan. However, as you know, and we have depicted here, what the common that you're seeing a lot in Warren County along the bypass and in different areas is 2 8-plexes joined with a breezeway in the idea of creating a facade of looks like these would be facing Smallhouse Rd. That's the current buildings when they were under construction, and we submitted some more, and this is when they're pretty much dressed up. The distinction here is that the parking is in the front of these buildings, and in the design concept that we have, it'll be completely to the side and cannot be in front of the buildings. And so it'll be more in compliance, compatible with other single-family homes where they have driveways to the side of their buildings. The couple things that were mentioned is that is it in compliance with the area around it. Directly across the street is Covington Oaks. They have a density of around 15 units per dwelling per acre, and they are directly across the street. And so these buildings, those buildings will mimic, these new buildings will mimic what those are because it's approximately 8 units per building. And so really the only reason for the FLUM is the 3 additional units. And so that's why we would keep in the DPCs the 16 units maximum, because RM4 would let us go far beyond that, and we don't want to do that, and that's not the design or the intent. I've already spoken with my client previously, and they will be fine with no more than 8 units per unit or per building, so we can add that to the DPCs under number 4.
So you're going to add a DPC there?
Well, we can just
amend the
add
existing?
into 4, and no building would be more than 8 units.
Got it.
I need to clarify something. The building shown in the picture is all under one roof. So we would
Correct.
consider that to be a 16-unit building, not 2 8-plexes connected by a breezeway. It's still just one building under one roof, all tied together. So there would, as shown here, there are 16 units in one building.
So we would not be able to connect it with the breezeway. They would have to be separated. So the distinction would be there. But the idea of this is showing that the facade looks like they're facing Smallhouse Rd. That's the main purpose of the description.
Hey, if I may
Sure.
ask a question of staff, just to get my own clarification. Does staff prefer to single or one or connected via breezeway? Do
2
you,
separate buildings or one
do
building?
you prefer 2 separate buildings?
Well, I think it's up to the commission to consider if connected under one roof, if the bulk and appearance of that building under one roof is compatible with the area versus the bulk of 2 smaller buildings under 2 roofs, if those are more compatible with the area.
Pardon me, Mark, I just want to get some more clarification here. The Covington, is it Covington Oaks? Are those structures similar to this facade, or are they similar to single 8-plexes?
I know that some of those buildings they're 3 stories because I used to live in one of the buildings. I'm trying to remember. I think the building closer to Smallhouse Rd is only 2 stories, the one that's more directly across from this development. But I can't say with certainty how many units are in that building. I think some of those incorporate garages and have a little bit different of a design. I don't know if that's not really terribly helpful. I'm sorry.
So, Mark, I don't want to give you too many questions because I'm not sure if you were finished, but I think one of the things I would want to know is, does connecting these two units do anything for you? Does it help you with parking? Does it, do you have a strong preference? Clearly you do because you're using this facade, but was that the intent?
No, the intent was just showing what the facade of the building would look like. And if we need to separate the two buildings and not have the breezeway, that's not an issue.
You're
That's
okay
not
with
the
that?
purpose of that. The idea is just showing that we have doors facing the street, so it looks more like what another home would look like with doors facing the street. And that's the idea and the intent. It's not the idea and intent to create the breezeway. The breezeway, can be nice for tenants, but if it meets with the criteria of making it look like two separate structures is not an issue. And according to what staff comments were, is that would be their requirement anyway.
Okay. So here's why I'm asking so many questions about this. Many times when we're looking at these, there's this inspiration photo or something that's presented, and what I'm going to ask is, can we use this facade in the DPC so that we know we get a building that looks like that? Otherwise, we include it and we're done.
We do have in DPC 9, building orientation shall have an appearance of a front facade facing Smallhouse Road and have a building line with other residences along Smallhouse Road, so it'll be in line with the other homes.
But there's no requirement that it looks like this? No? Correct?
Covington Oaks, it's been a while since I've gone through there, but they sometimes will have 10 or 12 in a building, and it'll be arranged a little bit differently, but they aren't designed in an 8-plex format. No, they are not. What's the question? This would be facing that facade would be facing the park. So we're going to have an appearance. So actually the side of the building faces Smallhouse Road. So just clarify. Okay. We can't do it that way. We'll have to fix it.
Appearance
Right.
of the front, but it won't be the front, like the front door.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and swear you in? Let's swear in Jace Caldwell here. He's already been sworn in, so he can give a little more explanation of his design.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. So this building right here is identical to what I have shown on my concept, but I would like to point out, I guess I can't get back to my concept. If you turn this building 90 degrees and looked at the side of it, that's actually the side I have facing Smallhouse Road. And the intent of the DPC was to make it look like a front, but in all reality, those breezeways will be facing the parking lot so that the tenants can come from the parking lot, walk through that breezeway that you're looking at, through the first one and into the second one. Does that make sense? No? I'm sorry.
So Jason, you
Because
saying-
Jace, I thought we were saying it's two separate buildings.
It is two separate buildings.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the breezeway is not the issue.
So look, this right here, and you can hardly see it. I can see it because I've looked at this building 1,000 times. That's the breezeway. It goes this way. And so you'd have a sidewalk that connected from here through, connect these two buildings. It would not be connected by a breezeway right there. And the intent, when you start getting over 12 units, it starts to bring up a lot more code requirements. You have to have a licensed architect stamp your plans. There's just a lot more that goes into it when you get into 16 units versus 2 8s. So it's our preference to have 2 8s.
So Jay, let me ask you something.
Yes, sir.
Is it the side of the buildings that are going to face Nashville Road?
Correct.
Or Smallhouse, excuse me, Smallhouse.
And that's why we put in, but they should look like a front. Just whatever treatments he does to the side, whether it's, I don't know, I'm not very good at that, explaining, but it'll look like it would be a front. But
How can it look like it's a front with no doors?
trying to think of another one. We actually, this project that he took a picture on, we had the same situation. I don't know, do we have a picture of that, David?
So what are they doing? Are they adding gables? What are they doing to give it that front facade, the elevation?
A little outside my expertise, but yes, they're adding gables and porches and windows and some of those things. So.
I don't understand how that makes it look like a front. There's no doors. That would be a front to me.
I don't know that there's, and staff may be able to help me, I don't know if there's any, I've done this multiple projects and it just hasn't asked me specifically. I don't know what kind of requirements you'd want to see. Do you want to see the front door on the front to be considered the appearance of a front facade. Does that make sense? Maybe the staff can, do you have another one that have an
Well,
example
there have
of?
been development plan conditions before that said that the buildings would face the road, or in lieu of that, they could design the facade to have an appearance of a front facade, even if it's like, I guess, even if it's fake, even if it doesn't really, it's not functional, so.
Can't think of any residential ones, though.
So let me clarify two things. One, is there a requirement that this face small house?
Well, in the conditions as worded, it says that they'll either face or, which number is that? Thank you, Ham.
It
Yeah,
actually says
or
number
have the
9.
appearance of a front facing
Okay, so it is,
facade.
the
But-
is there.
Yeah, it's an either.
But
or.
Rachel, because of that is why they can't comply with the DPC 9. Because you can't line up the side of the buildings. And you got two of them like that.
Well, I think DPC 9, or sorry, wait,
That's
did
the
you
one
say?
you said? DPC 9 requires the buildings be in line with the other residents along Smallhouse Road.
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask Jace to clarify that, because when I scale off the current homes that are along Smallhouse Road, I think this building is shown just behind the 25-foot minimum setback in RM4, but the other homes along Smallhouse Road are set back more than 25 feet. So you would, I guess, the plan is shown, pulls the buildings up closer to Smallhouse Road than all of the current structures. So the plan up here would not meet the requirement listed in number 9.
Well, and you have that, Rachel, you have that on page 3, the first paragraph. DCP 9 requires the buildings to be in line with other residents along Smallhouse Road. However, the proposed setback shown on the preliminary development plan does not meet this requirement.
Right. There's a conflict between that condition and this plan.
So Jace, is there not a way to position those buildings to face Smallhouse Road?
And I guess your question, Commissioner Volker, is that having the side with the doors there facing the small house road is your question?
No.
Okay.
Question is there not a way to position those two eightplexes on that lot to face, and to line up like the other
Yes.
houses?
So now you're addressing both issues. So we got a conflict and we can't figure out how to, it appears on the surface that you can't do what it's stated here. They would have to be facing, and they would have to be probably a 35-foot setback in the front, roughly, to a line, I think is what Rachel said. Is that approximately correct? The front setback would need to be what?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you can see this very well, but the blue line is roughly 25 feet.
Yeah.
So
So-
you can see these homes are set back
35
further.
35
They're
to-
probably 35, 40 feet
35
off
to
the
50
road.
feet possibly.
So the buildings shown on here, if developed in this configuration, would stick out in front of the current homes that are on Smallhouse Road.
Correct. And so Mark, that I think is what we're trying to.
Well,
try to
that's
get
why
to.
we have the DPCs, that they shall not be further than the setbacks of the existing homes there. And so this is a preliminary concept that was put together showing 2 eightplexes in general in what the square footage will be. But this DPC requires us, if we do 2 buildings with no more than 8 units per, that it has to be in the setback with that other existing homes, and that they will have to have facades that it appears that the front they are facing Smallhouse Road just like another home would. And so that's the requirement that we've agreed to do.
Okay, so it is your commitment that you will make the adjustments that your client will make the adjustments that they have to make in order to comply with the DPCs, correct?
Well, we have to comply with the DPC. We don't have a choice. It's like our old binding elements. It's DPCs are the same thing. We can't build anything that is out of compliance with this development plan condition.
Mark?
And ultimately, we're talking about 3 additional units.
I don't think I have as big a problem with the density as I do the positions of the buildings.
Yeah, and the setbacks.
I mean,
The
I don't
appearance.
love, don't get me wrong, I don't love the density, but I get it. It's 3 units, it's not the biggest, it's not the end of the world. But I don't love the way those buildings sit on Smallhouse Road. I just don't think you can make, I mean,
They will be no further close, they will be no closer to the
I'm
road
not
than the
worried about
existing
that.
homes. You're just thinking of how they're gonna look.
yeah, the way they're positioned, on the lots.
Well, part of the staff comments is that they didn't want any parking in the front. And so if you notice that the parking lot connects to an existing alleyway that stubs at the end, right over here. This alleyway is existing right here. To the right, there is an alley easement, but there is no alley built. And so this is actually connecting to the existing alley that is about a third of the way into the block there. And so it allows for cars going in and out through the alley and through Smallhouse Road. And that's the part in regard to traffic, in whether it would be a big change or not, that we have 2 outlets for this particular lot. And being on College Street, I know the alley gets as much, I travel my alley more than I do College Street. That's just the way they work. So, regardless, I understand it'd be nice if we had a final design for you to approve, but this is very preliminary, showing 2 8-plex units. And so we do have to comply with this. Building orientation shall have an appearance of a front facade. And if we need to put doors, windows, awnings, porches, that'll be done to make it look like the front of a home.
But let me ask you this, would you table it until you can bring something back to us that we can, got a better thought process and a better vision of what you're really trying to do?
Definitely something I'll ask my client, but I wanted to make sure there's not other issues that we need to address other than
I think
this.
if that's what Mr. Volkert said, I think if you come back with that design, we need to address the setback of how
Okay.
it,
Appear on the lot.
well, how it's going to appear with the other houses on Smallhouse Road. And using Rachel's map, your blue line on your map, we're now encroaching and blocking potentially closer to the road than the other ones.
Right, and I've seen you kind of shaking your head, but the way I wrote this is that it'll have a building in line with other residences, and if we need to write it more strict, we'll be glad to do so. Our intent is not to have a front being any closer than the existing buildings that are there on both sides.
I think a couple of things that in the staff's report, Mark, is that DCP requires the buildings in line with other residence. However, the proposed setback shown in the preliminary development plan does not meet this requirement, and I think that's part of the question.
And I'll tell you one other thing, Mark, that I would like to see on this is I'd like to see a fence around it. I mean, if you look at the house next door, I mean, you're gonna have, I mean, by the way this is drawn, they're gonna have the back of an 8-plex to them.
Correct. And that's one of the things we've discussed, because Covington Oaks actually has pretty nice landscaping around it. They have some fencing, and our plan is to mimic that. And so if we needed to include that,
Yeah,
that's not an
that'd be
issue.
great. I mean, yeah.
And so I'm only going to speak for myself, Mark. I think you've done a good job writing these. but
Other than I
just-
put it 7, I didn't delete it out of the previous one. It had nothing to do with it.
That's all right. And I like what you're conveying to me. But if you leave here tonight and your client gets offered multi-million dollars for this and somebody else has a completely different vision for it, we would like to know what's really going to be built there. In that unlikely event that your client abandons this project and sells it, and now we've got nothing more than the zoning and none of those commitments. So if we refine this and we really understand what's really going to be built there, it helps us.
Are there any other concerns that the commissioners have that we can address, that need to be addressed?
I don't have a concern, but I have a question, I guess, of staff. Rachel, what, and you may have answered this, what is the exact minimum setback that they would have to adhere to?
The minimum by the ordinance is 25 feet from the front property line along Smallhouse Rd, which is on this preliminary development plan. It's the dashed line that runs right below those buildings. They're not touching it exactly, but it's that thin dashed line right beneath the front of those buildings is that 25-foot setback.
That line right there, Rachel?
Yes.
So we can come back and show that we can move it 10 to 15 feet back, be in compliance. And probably what I'll have Jace do is show the existing structures where they are onto the right and left, and you can see exactly where the line is.
I have a question for staff. When they come back, Ms. Hurt, how do we address this private driveway on page 2? At the bottom, staff suggests the applicants clarify how a private travelway connecting two public right-of-ways will improve traffic flow.
I think Mark was trying to touch on that just a minute ago when he was talking about the alley.
Back alley.
Behind.
Okay.
But I guess our staff was just having, we were not understanding how a private travelway was going to improve traffic flow because it's not for public use. It would only serve the development, and so that's why we had asked for clarification on that.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the response is that the whole idea is to not cause undue burden on existing traffic flow. This creates multiple entrances and exits, and that's kind of a criteria of planning, is that we don't want cul-de-sacs everywhere because it stops flow of traffic and a natural flow and progression. That's the intent of that. But I've already touched base with my client, and we'll be glad to table this and bring a more definitive preliminary plan of what these will actually look like and with the setbacks. And so.
All right, so.
Or not to delay this unnecessarily, but I hear comments in the audience that indicate to me that there's opposition here. And so if we can, in some abbreviated form, hear what those concerns are so that Mr. Alcott can add that to the list of things that we're going to hear about at the next gathering.
It'd be an excellent suggestion. I agree with that.
Thank you, Ham. You've heard the comments, I think, to summarize them, the setback on Smallhouse Road, traffic, the facade of how it's going to look facing Smallhouse Road. Are there any other comments? We welcome any other comments that anybody would like to make. Yes, sir. Yes. Your name and address?
Daniel Moran. I own property adjoining this.
Your address, please, sir.
I'm sorry?
Your address, where you live.
683 Bentworth.
Yes, sir. Swear to tell the truth, Mr.
I
Marie.
do.
Thank you.
Okay, so I appreciate what y'all say when you say use the change sparingly. I think we need to look at who does the change benefit. Does it benefit the community as a whole? Does it benefit one entity? Or on the flip side, is it a deterrent for the adjoining properties? I think there's some properties, I own property adjoining this, I think you could argue that it is a deterrent to put that much density around so many single-family homes. I like the idea of putting in there, and let me say, I'm all for development. I own and manage rental properties for a living. I've built the majority of my rental properties, so I'm all for the development of this property. That old house should have been torn down a long time ago and something put back. I'm not in favor of so many units there. I would like to see a restriction put in there of a privacy fence with some landscaping, mainly to keep people from cutting through our properties. I know that happens a lot over in that area. A lot of walkers would easily cut that corner and go through there, especially when you put that much density on there. I have a lot of questions revolved around that alley. It is shown on paper as an alley, but by all intents and purposes, there's no alley there. The people that live over on 15th Street, that alley is their driveway. Now, another concern I would have I'm guessing with the number of units, and I'm guessing it's the rule of the 1.5 bedrooms per unit rule with the 24 spots marked on there, there's nothing shown on there for a dumpster pad. And having managed multi-unit complexes, I can tell you that is a major issue, is trash, and it will get ugly in a hurry. So if there's no dumpster for commercial dumpster pad, if you then turn around and say you're going to let 16 households have an individual trash can, that is very unsightly in a hurry. I think we can all agree on that. So my biggest concerns with the 1-bedroom units and the 1.5 parking spaces per unit, that might be the rule, but having managed multi-unit complexes, that math doesn't work out very often. And what happens is the tenants come home, you have a 2-car family or a couple with 2 vehicles. You don't have enough spaces for that many people. And people come home, they don't have a place to park, so then they start parking, they pull up on the curbs, they pull up in the yards. And I'm only speaking from experience in managing these type units where parking, you put the bare minimum with that many units in there, it becomes an issue. And on that 0.75 acres of ground to put that many people with the bare minimum parking and no dumpster pad, I just foresee some challenges going forward, and that would be a deterrent for the adjoining landowners.
Thank you for your,
So we wrote down dumpsters, the alley function, compatibility, and parking.
thank you, Mr. Moran. Anybody else in the audience like to make a comment? Anything we haven't discussed? State your name, please, sir.
Johnny Douglas, 1407 Smallhouse.
Swear to tell the truth.
I certainly do.
All right.
I think I'm here trying to fight a losing fight because I've already heard there's going to be 13 apartments put there. I'm not for that, like Daniel said.
Sir, it's already zoned for that.
Well, it's still too many.
Okay, well, there's nothing we can do about that.
I know you can change it though.
No,
if you
sir,
want
we
to.
can't.
No.
No, we can't.
And we're pretty much at a 40-foot setback, I believe, Rachel. That's what you've told me. And that's what my house is. And I'm on the corner there. My family has owned that home since 1968. And I've lived there myself for the past 24 years and loved every bit of it. Intersection. There is no true intersection to that property. The closest street to that, I believe, is Newton. There's not an intersection. You're like this right here. The alley that was just mentioned was only paved about 3 years ago, and none of us living around there could figure out why it was paved. We just didn't know what happened. They just showed up and blacktopped it, and there it was. And where are there going to be patios or porches or things like that for this development?
I think when they come back with their concept plan, Mr. Douglas, that they'll address that. That's why we're here tonight, to answer some of these questions, but that's a valid question for the applicants to answer.
I used to have 2 very nice old trees on the side of where the development is proposed. I lost those. I planted some Leland cypresses. They've done wonders, but it's not going to be enough to provide enough privacy for me living there. I won't be able to go on that patio. I won't feel comfortable going over there. Just this past week, I called David. I said, David, are there supposed to be 4 people over there trying to break into the house? And he said, absolutely not. That's part of the thing that you're going to run into sometimes when you've got people like that are trying to break into things. Fencing, what are you talking about with fencing, and where is that fencing going to go?
He's going to come back with that.
Okay. You know, I just...
Douglas, you got about one more minute, okay? Everybody gets.
I didn't know I had a limit. Thank you
Well,
much.
we had it up on the screen,
Well,
so.
okay, I didn't know which section I was in, if I was in the 15-minute or what. But, you know, I'm quoting from the newspaper today. I'd rather have a false alarm than an intrusion on the neighborhood. And I'm quoting Mr. Peterson. I feel this is an intrusion into this neighborhood. We've gotten Covington Oaks, and we've lived with it. I watched it grow up, but I really want this to stay single family. I know they can do what they want to, but there's also things, that's why you have an amendments to things. Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Are there any other comments other than what has been addressed here tonight? So it's tabled, and we have to vote to.
There should be a motion to recess this meeting to reconvene on Thursday, March 17 at 5:30 p.m. in this building. And we'll have to have the same 7.
This is the FLUM was 12 all members. So these.
Is that a FLUM meeting? Is the 17th a FLUM meeting? Okay.
Remember, this was a makeup for.
Okay.
No.
From the gym.
Yeah.
So everybody needs to be here, everybody has to be here in order for it to go forward on March 17.
But we have to have a quorum.
You have to have quorum. I mean, as long as you have quorum. Yeah. And you would. Yeah, you got the 5 up there.
Nobody can get the COVID. Yeah.
So if we could have a motion to recess and reconvene on March 17th.
Second.
Commissioner Ritchie? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Starks?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Blackburn?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Warren?
Yes, ma'am. Motion to recess to March the 17th. Thank you all for your time tonight. Our next item is 2022-04 FLUM, Bluegrass Property Management of Bowling Green LLC and Elijah Properties LLC and James Whitty have filed an application for a future land use mapping on a tract of land containing approximately 3.03 acres located at 3732 Sunnyside-Gotts Rd from agricultural to rural density residential. All board members will vote on this, and if the future land use map amendment is approved, then we will go to item number 6, 2022-08Z County Bluegrass Property Management of Bowling Green and LLC and Elijah Properties LLC and James Whitty have filed an application to rezone a tract of land containing approximately 3.036 acres located at 3732 Sunnyside-Gotts Rd from agriculture to RE residential state with a general development plan.
Or this is Amy Scott.
Amy, this is your first.
It is. I figured it was time to step up to the podium. So.
Let it roll.
Yeah. All right. First off, I would like to start out by pointing out that you have at your seat a letter of opposition for the proposed request at 3723 Sunnyside-Gotts Rd. So if you did not get that in your seat, then we probably have some copies for you to look at. So. All right, the current zoning is ag. The proposed zoning is RE. The proposed land use is single-family residential, and the future land use is agriculture. The applicants are proposing to amend the FLUM for 3.0366 acres from agriculture to rural density residential. If the FLUM amendment is approved, the applicants would like to rezone the property from agriculture to RE in order to divide the property into a maximum of 3 single-family residential lots, and the existing home is proposed to remain. have there. Flipping over to page 2, there is the future land use map. LU 1.14 criteria there for you. Moving down to site characteristics review. I point out the top paragraph there, the layout, lot size, and setbacks. The proposed layout is shown on the attached development plan. Setbacks will adhere to the RE standards set forth in the zoning ordinance. There is an existing residence and 2 accessory buildings on the property that are proposed to remain. The zoning ordinance does not permit standalone outbuildings or barns on the property zoned RE without the existence of a primary residential structure. So any primary residential structure must be also constructed in front of said outbuilding or barn unless a waiver is obtained separately to allow a home to be constructed somewhere between the property. The property will not be able to be subdivided as shown unless the outbuildings are removed or platted on the same lot with the current residence. Another option staff suggested to the applicants was to include a DPC that addresses the removal of such structures or issuance of a building permit for residents on the proposed lot within a specific time. For the recording of the plat, the applicants did not address this suggestion. So we have site design and compatibility there for your review. I won't go over those, but I can if you would like. Getting into the development plan conditions. The applicant submitted the following DPC conditions to help address compatibility with the surrounding area. The existing residents will continue to utilize the existing septic system located on the property. In the event the existing home is ever replaced or if a new home is constructed on the property, the Barren River District Health Department shall inspect the current system and issue any permit. Number 2, no mobile or manufactured home shall be permitted on the property. Number 3, each new single-family residence shall have at least 1,500 square feet of heated, cooled living space, exclusive of garages and porches. Any new residence built on the premises shall be oriented toward Sunnyside-Gotts Rd and have at least a 40-foot building setback from Sunnyside-Gotts Rd. Number 4, any new residences must have at least a 1-car garage. Number 5, any new residence must be constructed of 50% brick, stone, concrete-based siding, LP smart siding, or other modern masonry materials, and no plain-faced block will be allowed. Number 6, the location of any proposed driveway shall be coordinated with and approved by the Warren County Public Works Department prior to the application for a building permit. We have the Focus 2030 category review there for you to look over. I can touch on any of those if you would like. If not, moving back to the first page for points to consider. The Planning Commission should consider if the proposed FLUM amendment meets the criteria outlined in LU 1.1.4 of the Comprehensive Plan. The current FLUM designation of agriculture, coupled with the exceptions outlined in LU 1.1.4, would allow the rezoning of the property and subdivision of one additional lot without first requiring a FLUM amendment. It is the third proposed lot that has triggered the FLUM amendment request. If approved, the proposed zone change would be consistent with the FLUM and rural density residential category. The proposed development complies with some of the site characteristics review criteria, with considerations noting regarding the current outbuildings located on the property, sinkholes, and the existing historic residence. The proposed general development plan complies with majority of the review criteria for site design and meets the minimum requirements in the zoning ordinance. And lastly, the Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is compatible with the surrounding area. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. They did not, correct, they did not address those in the DCP. Yeah.
I think the staff has said that if those outbuildings are demolished before the issuance of the building permit, that would
If it's before the plat is recorded. If a permit is issued in conjunction with the plat recordation or within a certain amount of time, they could stay as long as they're on the same lot as a primary residence.
Okay, well, we'll work that out. Sorry.
I have a question, I guess, more generally for staff. I'm reading the letter that you addressed, or the concern that someone has sent in, and the last sentence says, "I'm hoping this can remain one lot, and it's agriculture." But I think by right, they could already divide this into 2 lots, could they not?
They would still have to apply to rezone the property, but under the current future land use map designation, with the number of lots being limited to 2, if that were the proposal, there would not be a future land use map amendment needed in conjunction with the zone change. In either scenario, a zone change would be required, but it's the 3rd proposed lot that triggers the future land use map amendment.
Yeah, commissioners, any other questions? Is the applicant here or their representative? Mr. Alcott?
Hello again, Mark Alcott. I've already been sworn. Thank you for your time tonight. This is another FLUM change that is a minor modification. As was just discussed by Commissioner Graham, the current FLUM would allow for splitting up and rezoning into 2 individual single-family homes. And that was the original intent when this was bought from Master Commissioner in the last year. The home was very much in disrepair, really not livable, and it's been refurbished completely, and the historic home is being maintained. When this was being put together, with a little over 3 acres, it's possible because you have to have the acre minimum for septic tanks and for a single-family home, and so it was the possibility of having the extra lot came to light. And so that's the purpose of the FLUM change. And in regard to the outbuilding, the reason we didn't address is the whole purpose is that building would be removed because of how the location of the home would be there, and it's a small outbuilding on an older lot. And so if we need to make a DPC or demolish that prior to the plat being recorded, that will not be an issue.
I guess there's really no need to commit to a development plan condition if you're proposing to eliminate those accessory structures altogether before the plat is recorded.
Because there was no way for us to be able to keep the accessory structure with the existing home, and so to get that extra lot, and so that structure will be removed.
Mark, I have a question. On page 4, it says the development plan condition number 4, any new residence must have a 1-car garage. Would that be an attached garage or?
We left it open, but typically a 1-car garage, it doesn't make sense not to attach it, but if we need to put in the word attached, that's not an issue.
I would like to see that.
Pardon me?
I would like to see that.
Sure. And that, we will be glad to do that if that's necessary, once any other questions are addressed.
Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Alcott?
Mr. Whitty, if you come forward and be sworn in so we can develop, deal with that one development plan condition. And it'd be in regard to the...
Just a minute, Mark.
Okay, go ahead.
Your name?
David Whitty.
Address?
561 Linkside Lane, Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Mr. Whitty, swear to tell the truth for his commission.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
In regard to development plan condition number 4, it currently reads, any new residence must have at least a 1-car garage. The change recommendation and request is that it would read at least an attached 1-car garage. Are you in agreement with that change?
Yes, sir.
Very much. Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Alcott? Thank you, Mr. Alcott. Is there anyone in the audience that has a comment or a question about this proposed future land use? Yes, sir. If you'd state your name and address, please, sir.
Josh Pointer, 3795 Sunnyside-Gotts Rd.
Mr. Pointer, you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I'm in the property directly to the side and behind the proposed development, and I am opposed to shoehorning two homes on either side of the existing home for a couple of different reasons. I don't think that that proposed development will fit in with what is there now, which is, you know, you have a large working cattle farm directly across the road with a pond and barns and silos, and then you have leased corn and soybeans directly behind that. If I'm not mistaken, in reading over the application, I think we may even be underserved with regards to water adequacy for fire protection based on county regs right now, and I don't think adding two single-family residences, you know, will help alleviate that. Mainly, though, you know, we're very lucky to live in Warren County and Bowling Green in that we have both distinct, a city area and a county area. We can't bring commercial farming operations into the city for obvious reasons, and people that enjoy living in the country don't want to see homes shoehorned onto acre lots out there in the country. I mean, I think when you try to blend those things too much, each starts to lose the charms that are inherent with both.
Thank you, Mr. Pointer.
Thank you.
So we've heard about compatibility in the area and the water protection. Are there any other comments regarding this application? Thank you very much. We would call for our first motion would be our FLUM amendment, and then after that would be the proposed zoning map amendment.
Make a motion to approve the proposed future land use map amendment docket number 2022-04 FLUM based upon the testimony and documents presented in the public hearing. The proposed FLUM amendment has met the directive to amend the FLUM as outlined in LU 1.1.4 in the comprehensive plan. Further request this motion includes a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Ritchie, Commissioner Starks,
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld,
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Blackburn,
No, ma'am.
Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. So we have a tie vote.
Under the ordinance, are granted 30 days within.
We may need to discuss this, final action by planning commission. So it didn't pass. Just asking.
No, no, you make a good point. Make a good point, and I agree with you. I was about to give you my speech on your recommendations, and I was reminded by Mr. Peterson that you're not making a recommendation on a FLUM amendment. You are final action on that. And so there has been an application to amend the FLUM, and that application has not gained approval. And so your tie vote, which did not take action on the FLUM, is final action, and the application has failed.
So if the FLUM doesn't move forward, then we don't have the zone change, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I think so. Okay.
No, I just didn't want to ignore you.
Well, just circumventing the issue, and in regard to the no votes, I wasn't aware that there were concerns. And I want to ask staff this, because as we know, that without change of the FLUM, we can ask for a zone change to have two lots. But we don't have a preliminary design at this point for what that would be, and so I don't believe I can amend on the floor with that into 2 lots. Would that be your understanding? I just wanted to make sure I couldn't do a Hail Mary with that, so we wouldn't have to spend another month. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next item tonight is 2021 55Z County Mountain Victor Homes LLC, care of Zach Williams, have filed an application to rezone a tract of land containing approximately 6.211 acres located at 625 Old Lovers Lane from Ag to RM3 Townhouse Multifamily Residential with the General Development Plan. Okay. Mr. Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair Warren. We had a pre-app on June 17th for the property you see here outlined in yellow with an existing zoning that is ag, an existing land use that is ag, and a future land use. It's a little bit of a weird one, is residential because it's in the Lovers Lane overlay. And what we've got is the applicants proposing, and there's your future land use map there. What we've got again is the applicants proposing to rezone that 6.2 roughly acres on Old Lovers Lane from ag to RM3 to develop the property with 60 attached single-family residences. So despite the fact that it's RM3 multifamily zoning, again, that is single-family residences. Oops. Computer's being wonky. Looking on to the next page, you'll see the considerations for the future land use map. That's a pretty short category. Don't have to go over that there. Under the site characteristics review, I will highlight a couple things in particular. Under wastewater adequacy, you'll note that this property is located within 2,000 feet of sanitary sewer and will be required to connect for this development. And under natural features, that there are known sinkholes on the property and mature trees located around portions of the perimeter. The applicants did make agreements in DPC number 8 to address all of that, and I will get to that a little later in the staff report. Under site design and compatibility review, I will note the surrounding density. There is a mixture of low and moderate density single-family and multifamily residential uses in the area, and you can cite that density map there. Try to make full screen so you can view it possibly just a touch easier. And the current approved densities are range from 1.86 to 24.2 dwelling units per acre. And if you'll remember, we had the application that came before you a couple months back that was approved by the Planning Commission for 21.33 dwelling units per acre just north of this property. It is highlighted in red towards the top right or top middle of the page. The density for this proposal is 9.66 dwelling units per acre. We've got other considerations under that site design and compatibility review. But looking on over to the next page, I will highlight again the pedestrian bicycle transit facilities, that the site is less than 200 feet from sidewalk on Lovers Lane, with the greenway on the other side of the road, with a Go BG transit stop located at the entrance of the Lovers Lane soccer complex. And per DPC number 9, the residences will have access to those facilities. And again, I'll read that in more detail in just a moment. Under the traffic impact study portion, the applicants submitted a TIS completed in November of 2021 for the proposed development prepared by Cannon and Cannon, with the conclusions stating the following: that they would monitor growth of traffic volumes at the intersection of Lovers Lane and Old Lovers Lane, and that the operations may benefit from installation of a traffic signal once signal warrants were met, and that that it should maintain intersection corner site distances at the site access points by ensuring site grading, landscaping, and signing and other features do not restrict lines of sight. The access points on Lovers Lane should be located such that site distance is not restricted by the existing vertical crest curve in the vicinity of the access point. Warren County Public Works then further requested a right turn lane into the development from Old Lovers Lane to be installed by the developer. The applicants agreed to, in DPC number 2, that the developer shall install that right turn lane into the development from Old Lovers Lane and maintain that site distance at the access points, ensuring that site grading, landscaping, signing, and other features are not restricted or do not restrict the line of sight, and the access shall be installed in coordination with and as specified by Warren County Public Works. Looking on over to the next page, we see the area-specific policy review. This is in the Lovers Lane overlay FLUM. I'm not going to go through any of these in great detail. I will note that all of the policies are either generally or clearly in compliance or are up to the Planning Commission's determination, and those policies deal with density, compatibility, development standards, and internal travel ways. Looking on down at the general development plan conditions, we'll start with number 1, that utilities will be located underground. Number 2, I'm not going to restate, but that is that agreement to the traffic impact study recommendations and the request from Warren County Public Works. Number 3 deals with uniform lighting. Number 4 deals with outdoor parking of trailers, campers, boats, and wrecked vehicles, and deals with trash and recycling receptacles being hidden from street view. Number 5 deals with a maximum number of single-family attached homes, which for this is 60, and that only single-family residential uses shall be allowed. Number 6 states that no structures shall be constructed within 50 feet of Old Lovers Lane. Number 7 deals with minimum home size, which will be 1,684 square feet, and that each residence shall have a 1-car attached garage. No building shall be more than 2 stories. And then there is a slight amendment to number 7. If you're looking at your old packet, not the new set of DPCs, there's an extra sentence that structures immediately adjacent to Old Lovers Lane shall have front facades facing Old Lovers Lane. That was a late inclusion. Number 8, the developer shall make all reasonable efforts to preserve mature and healthy trees, not located in building envelopes or areas of utility placement or vehicular parking movement. And number 9 deals with curb, gutter, and sidewalks going in the development, and the developer installing a sidewalk along Old Lovers Lane to connect it to the current sidewalk on Lovers Lane. Number 10 deals with sinkholes, and number 11 deals with development condition number 4, becoming a private restriction once a subdivision plat or deed restriction is placed on it, and it will then no longer be a development plan condition. Under the Focus 2030 category review, I'm not going to go over any of them, but I'm happy to go over any of them if you do like, but except for the one on the next page, that the Planning Commission should determine compliance with LU 2.1.4, PR 1.7, and NCR 1.1.6. And again, that is that the applicants agreed in DPC number 8 to make all reasonable efforts to preserve mature and healthy trees not located in those areas of utility placement or vehicular parking movement. But I will note that, however, in looking at an aerial view of the property, it appears that the majority of the current trees are located in those areas, and additional landscaping will be required to be installed as outlined in Article 4 of the zoning ordinance. Flipping on back to the page 1, we'll wrap it up with the points to consider. Point to consider number 1 is that DPC number 8, again, I'm not going to restate that in great detail, but again, that they made a commitment to preserve trees, but most of the trees that they are committing to preserve do appear to be in the areas that are going to mostly be taken up by those building envelopes and areas of vehicular movement. And DPC number 2 actually is no longer applicable due to that sentence they added in DPC number 7. And that is all I've got for the staff report, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
Zach, at the rear of the property, there's kind of an odd-looking little square and some sort of structure. What am I looking at there?
Believe that's a water tower.
Water tower, all right.
And Zach, I have a question. I didn't see, unless I missed it, or do they have a homeowner association?
I do not believe they had a DPC regarding homeowners associations.
Okay.
But that is a good question for the applicants.
Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Jones? Thank you, Zach. The applicant or their representative here?
Good evening, Commission. Chris Davenport on behalf of the applicant. Again, swear to tell the truth, 921 College Street. Let me first address the last question, and Mr. Allen's here on behalf of the applicant, so I posed that question to him. He does wish to have an HOA. In fact, the HOA, since these will be the way these lots will be owned, that's going to be necessary. So I would suggest DPC 12B, the development shall have a homeowners association.
The usual language about the requirement until 50% of the lots are sold, that the developer
Help
be
her
responsible.
maintain those areas.
Everybody okay?
One other DPC, I think I sent an email to Rachel about, I'm not sure, and I could have been talking to Jody, Zach may have mentioned it. We also, one concern that the staff did have throughout this process, they noted that most of the homes on Old Lovers Lane, if not all, are oriented toward Old Lovers Lane. So we want to try to match that, and I think the best place to put that would be in number 7. Okay, and you probably did mention that. That's when I was, okay, I'm sorry. So I'll have Mr. Allen swear to those things in a minute. Just my overall summary of the application. First, I want to stress this will be a single-family use only. And so when you look at the zoning request is RM3. So that may tell you this is multifamily. Twin homes is allowed in that. And the reason, the way we button that up is through the DPC that says single-family use only. So these will be individually owned, not twin homes, excuse me, but they'll be condos, is what they'll be. They'll be individually owned condos, which is why the HOA is a necessity in the first place. So if I haven't confused myself, I hope I haven't confused you. But the RM3 is what allows the condominiums. And then, like I said, we have that single-family use restriction so that we make sure that's the case. There are no design requirements or materials you see. That's because this is the Lovers Lane overlay district. That's what will set those requirements. You may recall the other application that Zach mentioned was, I call it the Pendleton Application. It's the TCP properties that was here a couple months ago. That's the same issue with that one. Our density is at 9.66, well within the 1.86 to 24 units that's in the area. As Zach mentioned, the most recent one was the Pendleton Application. That was at 21.3, a much denser development. Rachel, do we have the elevation that I emailed to you? Is that? So I don't always bring these, but my client shared this with me, and I thought that it's something that the commission should see. I'll point out that the square footage is insanely particular. That's because they know exactly what product they're building. At 1,684 square feet per unit, first thing I'll notice is that's a significant size for a condominium. But the reason it's so specific is they know exactly what they're building. And so these are some elevations we have for that.
We have the list of owners, so we don't find great surprise in that.
So you've done your homework is what you're saying.
Well, it's right here on the application.
There you go. So really, I think that's what I wanted to hit on. The only other thing is they've agreed to extend, I think it's 120 feet of sidewalk along Old Lovers Lane. They don't actually own. It will be within the right-of-way and all that, but they're going to build that so that we can connect to the sidewalk and connect to the park and the green trails and all that. So I think that is a convenient way to bring some open space amenities to these residents, these homeowners that would own these condos. And I'm happy to answer any questions you all have.
Thank you, Mr. Davenport. Commissioners, any other questions?
And Jody can speak to that because I'm not sure about the makeup of them. Okay, we'll do that in a minute. Okay. Do you know how many, the bedroom, what the condos will consist of?
3 bedrooms.
3 bedrooms.
Any other question?
So I just want to make sure I understand. So these are 1,600 square foot condominiums.
Jody just whispered to me is he needs to clarify that with me. So, and I told him I'd be with him in just a minute.
All right, very good.
Let's get, because we have, are there any other questions, Mr. Davenport, before we do that? If we could bring Mr. Allen up, because I think there's some development plan conditions we're going to change.
Let me add one to that, if I may, then I'll have
Add one comment or
the DPC revision.
Okay.
So what Jody has shared with me is there are going to be, this floor plan will have 3 different size units in it, okay, at least. The smallest would be 1427, 1477. So that DPC should really read 1450, I would say.
Each resident shall have a minimum of 1,450 square feet of heated and cooled living space.
Correct. I would still say, although not as big as the 1,600 number, that's still a very significant size condominium compared to what other things I've seen presented. So if I may now, Mr. Warren, ask him if he agreed to those 3 revisions.
Mr. Allen? Name and address?
1402 Mount Air Circle.
What's your name?
Jody Allen.
Swear to tell the truth.
Yes, sir, sure do.
So Jody, number 1, do you agree to the revision to 1,450 square foot minimum heated and cooled living space for each unit?
Yes, sir.
Do you agree that the buildings adjacent to Old Lovers Lane will have front facades facing Old Lovers Lane?
Yes, sir.
Do you agree that there will be a homeowners association, and until such time as 50% of the units are sold, that will be maintained by the developer?
Yes, sir.
And I'm missing one, Ham, I think.
That's it.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you
all.
Thank you, Mr. Davenport. Is there anybody in the audience that has opposition to this or would like to make a comment? All right. Hearing none, we would call for a motion, please.
Make the motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and condition upon the general development plan, docket number 2021-55Z CO. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include the summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Starks?
Yes.
Commissioner Unseld?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Warren?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Graham, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
The motion is approved and will go to Warren County Fiscal Court. Our next item tonight is 2022-09Z County, Betty Crump, and our next item tonight is 2022-09Z County, Betty Crump and Melinda Trusty have filed an application to rezone tracts of land containing approximately 17.85 acres located at 0, 242 and 246 Nina Miller Road from Ag to RE Residential Estate to RE Residential Estate to Agriculture, RR Rural Residential, and RE Residential Estate with a general development plan.
we had a pre-application meeting for the property that you mentioned, December the 9th, 2021. Just to give you a little development history, ag is the original zoning for the properties. The properties located at 0 and 446 Miller Road were rezoned from ag to RE in 2014. Let's see. So the current zoning is ag and RE. The proposed zoning is ag, RR, and RE. The proposed land use is agriculture and single-family residential, and the future land use is agriculture. The applicants are proposing to rezone 14.85 acres from ag and RE to ag, RR, and RE in order to reconfigure the existing properties. The total number of lots is proposed to be reduced from 4 to 3. Flipping over, we have the future land use, site characteristic review, and site design and compatibility review for you to take a look at. I will note surrounding land uses. The surrounding area is mainly comprised of single-family residential and agricultural uses. There are also some vacant tracts in the general vicinity. Moving over to the general development plan conditions. Staff did not require DPCs for the ag portion of the rezoning application since the current ag tract does not have any DPCs. The applicants have submitted the following development plan conditions applicable to the RR and RE portions of the development to help address compatibility with the surrounding area. I do have there. Number 1, any new residence constructed on the property shall be oriented to face 9 Miller Road. Number 2, any new primary residential structure constructed on the property shall contain a minimum of 1,600 square feet of heated space. Number 3, the existing residents will continue to utilize the existing septic system located on the property. The Barren River District Health Department shall perform a site evaluation for any new residents prior to the issuance of a building permit. Number 4, at least 25% of the exterior of any new residential structure shall be constructed of brick, stone, or cementitious siding, and the foundation for any new residential structure shall be finished with brick veneer and shall not include exposed plain or split-faced block. Number 5, existing vegetation shall be preserved to the greatest extent feasible, with exceptions for building envelopes and driveways. Sinkholes shall be avoided or properly mitigated in accordance with the specifications of the Warren County Public Works Department during future development of the site. And number 6, the existing entrances are proposed to remain and will continue to serve the property. In the event any changes are proposed regarding access to the property, such modifications shall be made in coordination with and as approved by the Warren County Public Works Department. There below we have the Focus 2030 category review. We can take a look at those if you would like, but if not, we can move back to page number 1 under points to consider. The proposed development will remain generally compatible with the surrounding area because the only thing proposed to change is the configuration of the current property lines. The total number of lots is proposed to decrease from 4 to 3, and the existing homes and structures are proposed to remain as is. So, be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Amy. Commissioners, any questions for Amy? Thank you very much. Is the applicant here? Any comments that they would like to make? The applicants, Betty Crump and/or Melinda Trusty. Yes, ma'am. If you would come, do you have any comments you would like to make?
I'd just like to thank y'all for your patience and cooperation and willingness to work things out for all of us.
Okay.
It's so nice to work with us and everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has questions or opposition to this request? Would call for a motion, please.
Make a motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and conditioned upon the general development plan, docket number 2022-09Z County. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second. Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Starks?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volker?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Warren?
Yes, ma'am. Motion passes, and we'll go to Warren County Fiscal Court. Our last item tonight is 2022-10 Z County Stagner Farms LLC, care of Michael Vitale, have filed an application to rezone tracts of land containing approximately 5.733 acres located at 3461 Elrod Road and 0 Smallhouse Road, formerly 3863 Smallhouse Road, from RE Residential Estate and RS1D Single Family Residential to PUD Planned Unit Development with the General Development Plan. Rachel?
Thank you, Chair Warren. You should have a copy of an email that our staff received from someone in the area, so that's there for your reference. Also, we received a revised concept plan at 4:51 p.m. It did not make it into the PowerPoint, but we have it as a separate attachment, and I will show that here in just a second. As you mentioned, the proposal involves a rezoning application to planned unit development, which is PUD, in order to develop up to 34 single-family twin home lots, which the applicants will have to explain their new concept here in just a second. That may change some of the information within the staff report. But the current zoning is RS1D, single-family, and RE, single-family. The future land use map is moderate density residential. And this was the concept that was presented originally. Let me touch on the density map real quick before I switch to the other attachment. We will note under density on page 3 that density for surrounding developments range from 0.66 dwelling units per acre to 3.74 dwelling units per acre, and that the proposed density is 5.93 dwelling units per acre. Let me pull up the concept that we received late this afternoon. And like I said, the applicants will have to get up here in just a second and explain the difference in this new concept. But I will touch on the PUD zoning that's requested. The applicants have agreed that the development would generally adhere to the RS1D development standards, with the exception of two things, the first of which being that instead of having a minimum 25-foot setback, which is generally required in all zones, at least all residential zones, that the proposed front setback would be 18 feet. There is a requirement that each home incorporate an 18-foot wide driveway, and for that reason, under the PUD, parking would be allowed in excess of 50% of the front yard to be able to accommodate that 18-foot wide driveway. Generally, in RS1D, you're limited to no more than that. So that is one difference between RS1D and the proposed PUD zoning classification. On page 4, you will find a reference to the traffic impact study requirements. There was the traffic impact study was not required by Warren County Public Works Department in lieu of a commitment that driveways for the twin homes at the end of the development along the Hammerhead be coordinated with the Warren County Public Works Department, and the applicants did agree to abide by this requirement. Looking at the development plan conditions, number 1 requires all utilities be located underground and that there will be uniform streetlights. Number 2, each home would contain a minimum of 1,000 square feet of heated and cooled living space, exclusive of garages and porches. Number 3 addresses outdoor parking of trailers, campers, and other things. 4 outlines the proposed material requirements for the development. Number 5 limits the maximum number of lots to 34 and requires a minimum of a one-car attached garage, again with an 18-foot minimum driveway, the width of the driveway. 6, each home would have an 18-foot front yard setback. 7, all driveways will be concrete. 8, establishes a requirement for an HOA. 9, outlines maintenance of open space. 10, addresses trash and recycling receptacles. 11, requires sidewalks on both sides of the street. 12, looks at some of those development plan conditions that are more suitable as private restrictions. After the plat or other sort of restrictive covenants are recorded, those would then become private restrictions instead of development plan conditions. 13 requires that all lots be served by internal streets. All access shall be through the roundabout or a future connection to the adjacent property via the proposed stub street. We may have to reword this based on this new concept, but essentially there was an exemption for the lot. There were 2 twin homes shown on the previous concept. It looks like there may only be 1 home on this concept, so we may need to look at that development plan condition in a second. Number 14, side and rear facades along Elrod Road will be screened. 15 looks at preservation of existing vegetation. 16 addresses sinkholes. 17 requires that placement of fire hydrants be coordinated with the fire department. And 18 requires that driveway placement be coordinated with the Public Works Department. We have listed several items from the Focus 2030 Comprehensive Plan for your consideration on page 5 and 6. I will be happy to go over any of those in detail if need be. Otherwise, I may jump back to page 1 and look at our points to consider. The first is that there are mature tree lines running along the southeastern property line. Let me jump back to the aerial so you can see what I'm referencing here. Maybe. There we go. So there are mature tree lines running along the southeastern property line at 3461 Elrod Road and around the southeastern and southwestern boundaries of the property at 0 Smallhouse Rd. Staff suggested that the applicants consider defining the area of trees to be preserved, for example, a minimum buffer width around the development with a minimum tree caliper, and or establishing a minimum tree planting requirement for new lots in the development. The applicants did agree in DPC 15 that the developer will make all reasonable efforts to maintain mature vegetation, not interfering with utility construction or existing within building envelopes, but did not identify a perimeter buffer width or minimum caliper for the purposes of tree preservation. The applicants did include a requirement that each lot contain 2 trees, or 2 trees per unit. And then the last point to consider is that there are minimum home sizes in the area ranging from 1,400 to 1,800. Those are listed by development for your reference, and that the minimum home size for this development is 1,000 square feet. And then there is one more point to consider on page 2 on the back there. Each lot will be required to contain a minimum of 25% open space. The applicants agreed to provide sidewalks on both sides of the street, and the Planning Commission should consider if this is adequate, usable, and of scenic or ecological value. That is all for the staff report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Hurt?
So, Rachel, I do go this way occasionally, and my question is regarding the roundabout. Are there any proposed changes to the roundabout with this development?
Commissioner Graham, I am not sure. You may want to ask the applicants here in just a minute. We didn't discuss anything like that during our pre-application meetings, but that's a great question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, Commissioners? Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Is the applicant or their spokesperson here? Is that the new concept?
Good evening again, Chris Davenport, 921 College Street. Swear to tell the truth. On behalf of Stagner Farms, Mr. Vitale is also present in case he's needed, and I know he will be needed. Before I address this revised concept and some revised DPCs that need to match that, let me answer Commissioner Graham's question. So the answer to your question really is no, but, I guess, is the answer. And the reason I say no is it's kind of hard to make it out from the aerial. All right. I think I got what I need to click. Right here? Okay. It's kind of hard to make it out, but what I will call the curb cut is already there for this entrance point, which may surprise you. The reason it's there is this same applicant is the entity that donated the land for the roundabout years ago. So when Stagner Farms was constructed in this area, and I don't recall, Mike reminded me that it's more than a quarter mile from the roundabout, but I don't know, and it's less than a mile. It's somewhere in between those two distances. Even though per the transportation regulations, this area was further from our property line, it was still brought into the traffic improvements. So the agreement at that time was that the land was purchased by Stagner Farms, it was donated, the roundabout was constructed. And even at that point, in working with the county, Public Works, they knew at some point that this request would be coming. And so the reason I say yes and no, the no part of it is, obviously, where that little triangular piece is kind of in anticipation of this, obviously the public roadway is not constructed thereafter, as you can see from here. And what is proposed here would be a public roadway. Better use this one, the updated one. So this would be a public roadway. And this, there's not a traffic island there as such, but if you followed the curvature of the pavement, you would see what I'm talking about. So that's how I would try to answer that question.
So Chris, I'll probably move this to the back of your presentation, but there is a rather significant issue with that roundabout that probably needs to be addressed. And so first of all, I applaud your client for donating the land for the roundabout. But there may be a solution to that, and I'm going to maybe offer a solution, and then you can discuss it with your client.
Would it have to do with the middle of the roundabout?
So basically, the best way to describe it is the way the roundabout is currently constructed. Any truck that is pulling a trailer cannot get through the roundabout without driving in the dirt. And if you go through the roundabout, you can see evidence of that.
I anticipated that was going to be your point. And here's what my own clients have pointed that out to me in preparation for tonight. The issue is this is constructed by what the county wants to do. And according to Lucas Slavey, the engineer, originally when they were going to build this, that was going to be paved more like the Shive Lane roundabout is.
The center part was going to be paved?
Correct. And it was the county that did otherwise. So all I can say, I understand what you're saying, and I've heard, this is just what you hear, that they're considering going back and doing that. Can't speak for the county.
When we say they,
the County Public Works Department.
I don't know who's here tonight, but I can guarantee you there's going to be at least one of them who's going to come here to this podium and say, that is a poorly constructed roundabout. And so it would be great if we could identify who the party would be. And then secondly, if we could see if this applicant has any ability. I don't want to give an undue burden to your client, but the applicant does own the property that's going to connect to it, so it's kind of their problem as well. They're going to be inheriting something that might be a bit deficient here. So if you'd like, I'll go ahead and move that to the back. I want to let you get through your presentation, and then we'll have that discussion.
I anticipate that was probably the point you were going to make, because I've been told that as well. The reason we have a revised concept is in the middle of the week, we heard from different sources what some of the concerns of the neighbors were, particularly McKenzie Meadows. So the applicant, Stagner Farms, worked with their engineer, Lucas Slavely, to try to address that some. And this concept, along with some DPCs I'm going to offer to buttress this, we hope will address those. So the first thing I want to point out is in this concept, we now have no single-family attached home lots adjacent to McKenzie Meadows. So what I want to point out here is this is a single-family detached home, just a regular home. This is a single-family detached home. And so I think the best place to put that would be it'd be helpful if I got the right staff report. Staff, you have any suggestions where it makes most sense for you all?
Number 5, yeah.
Number 5? Yeah, we are. So let's talk about 5. Thank you, Rachel. So the concept has now been revised to 32 residential lots. That will bring the density down a little bit, not a great amount, but instead of 34, 32. Each home shall have a minimum one-car attached garage with a minimum 18-foot driveway. That's fine, that will stay. I'll add a sentence that only single-family detached homes shall be constructed on lots adjoining McKenzie Meadows, period. And then I would add that the development shall contain, let me back up. Let me go back to that. So single-family homes on lots adjoining McKenzie Meadows, not period, Hamp, containing at least 1,800 square feet heated and cooled living space, and at least a 2-car attached garage, period. Which means that these two homes, McKenzie Meadows minimum's 1,800 per your staff report. These two homes will have the same square footage minimum and will have at least a 2-car garage. That'd be every lot that adjoins McKenzie Meadows. And then the last sentence I'd like to put on that DPC would be the development shall contain no less than 12 homes with a 2-car attached garage. And we know that 2 of those homes will be these. No fewer than 12 homes shall contain at least a 2-car attached garage. And on this concept, you can see at least conceivably how that is thought about. You see these 2, that would be indicative of 10 separate homes here, attached homes with 2-car garages, and then we know these have to have 2-car garages. The reason for that is one of the concerns that some of the folks in the area raise is that a lot of the homes, or most of the homes, are 2 cars. So we feel like by mixing those in and requiring 2-car garages adjoining McKenzie Meadows, we hope that addresses, I mean, obviously they're not all 2-car garage, but we hope that will at least address that concern some. In DPC number 4, and I'll tell the commission, these development conditions were taken from Stagner Farms down the road. Stagner Farms is also a PUD with these same driveways, and so we use the same restrictions, but we know, and in Stagner, that's a larger development. In Stagner, this restriction had this kind of unusual or creative, no fewer than 40% homes will have at least, we're gonna revise that, okay? And so in paragraph 4, HAMP, if we go down to the sentence that says no less than 40%, I would like to strike no less than 40% of the, and begin that sentence with a capital R. Residences shall have a 70% exterior consisting of brick, stone, drive-it, cement siding, man-made stone, or engineered wood siding, period. Vinyl siding shall be allowed in soffits and gables only. So what that tells us then, that no more than 30% of any outside of any home will be vinyl, and that vinyl will only be in soffits and gables. I think we've already got the brick and stone foundation, yeah, so that's already in there.
And you talk about at the time the developer may transfer ownership and maintenance responsibility to the neighborhood association. I mean, I guess I'd like for it to see maybe just a little more clear that there will be an HOA.
That's,
I missed that.
it's in number 8, yeah.
I was reading that and then looking for it.
And then lastly, we've got to address the roundabout access, and that is in number 13. And because we got this one single-family home that is served via Elrod. It's right here. And again, Public Works agreed that that was fine, that they were okay with that, no more than that one. So I think in number 13, the second sentence should read, all access shall be via the roundabout or a future connection to the adjacent property via the proposed substreet, with the exception of one single-family detached home which shall be served via Elrod Road with access along the, and I believe it's the southernmost property line. Do I have my bearings correct? And the reason for that last part is Public Works wanted that access here. They don't want it down here. I think there's a pump station right here. Okay. They wanted it south of that.
So just to clarify, that's their choice, because it does get close to the entrance to, what's the other subdivision there? McKenzie Meadows, but that's where they wanted to put it, right?
Correct.
All right, very good.
And so I know that's a lot of changes on the floor, and I know that that's not preferred. I understand that, but literally this has been addressed since the concerns we heard about Wednesday. So we wanted to do that ahead of time as much as possible. And, you know, the other thing that my client really wants everybody to be aware of, this drainage area currently is serving McKenzie Meadows also. But it's on Stagner Farms property. It will continue to do so. There's not going to be any change in that. There's plenty, and Lucas is here, there's plenty of capacity there. That's when we talk about the other access in that DPC, there is, staff wanted us to stub right here, okay? Currently there won't be a connection there, but that will be future potential. I have heard through the grapevine some folks at McKenzie Meadows, I think, had the conception or the belief that this was going to somehow connect in up here. It won't. It won't.
And Chris, that stubbed is just, staff can correct me if I'm wrong, just meets our requirement, our stub street
Correct.
requirement.
Because that adjoining acre is sufficient size that it triggers that requirement.
Got it, all right, thank you.
That's really what I wanted to present to you guys. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And Commissioner Graham, I'll talk to Mike more about the roundabout and see, and I'll talk to Lucas too, because I know Lucas has been involved in a lot of discussions with the county, both when it was constructed back in the day and more recently.
Okay.
But that's not really the applicant's issue. I mean, honestly, we can't ask them.
Exactly right.
That's a Warren County issue.
It is, I agree, but he is, so I think Chris clarified something. That entrance, if he was constructing a new entrance off of the roundabout, the radius off of that roundabout, his entrance could possibly help the issue, but I think what Chris is saying is that entrance is already cut in.
That's what my client, it's
right.
I don't know how to term it. But
right up.
Yeah, and so you're exactly right. I don't want to.
That's not for us.
Put an undue burden on the client either. He's already donated the land, but at the end of the day, it is a very poorly designed roundabout, without a doubt. And so I'm sure some here are going to be interested in that, and if Lucas has any insights to that, we'll go ahead and bring him up and let him share any information he might have.
Okay.
Lucas Slavey, 1015 Shive Lane. I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you, Lucas.
Just to give you the size of that roundabout, if you've been to the one on Shive Lane, that one is the exact same size as that one. What makes it appear small is the mountable curb and the mountable concrete in the center. The diameter and all the radiuses and everything are the exact same size. It was mimicked after that one on Shive. It's just the mountable median that's
So I
all
think
the
difference, and this is a significant difference. You're exactly right. If you look at the diameter, if you look at everything, actually I think this is a very attractive appearing roundabout. The problem is on the one on Shive Lane, right? If a truck is pulling a trailer, you know where I'm going with this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The wheel can roll up onto the curb, and it doesn't create an unsightly appearance. You don't have chug holes, on both sides of it. With this, the driver, he has to make a choice. Either I run my right wheel into the mud, or my trailer runs in the mud. Those are the only two choices you got, because a trailer, and with the amount of construction that we have, it's something that needs to be addressed. So Chris alluded to there has been some discussion, perhaps at least, with County Public Works about addressing that issue. Do you know anything do you have anything that you could add to that?
We've talked about it. We talked about it during the design phase, and it got pulled out, just budget at the time, but we have talked about it, and I don't have any insight as to when or.
Would it be fair to say, for the people in the audience here tonight, that that it has been that Public Works is very much aware of the issue, and it has been discussed?
Absolutely.
All right, very much. Thank you.
But it's also something that we cannot take up as part of this applicant.
Yeah, and so I want to clarify. Initially, when I asked about it, I didn't realize that the cut-in for this subdivision is already there.
Okay.
If it was going to have to be cut in, then it was something that we want to talk about, because his connection could affect that. But Chris is telling me it's already there, so it isn't anything that we change here.
Before you all open it up, would it be right for me to have Mr. Vitale to honor those DPCs? You want to do that at this stage?
Mike Vitale, 1101 College Street. I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
Mike, did you hear those revisions to the development conditions?
Yes.
And just to summarize them, the two detached homes adjoining McKenzie Farms, 1,800 square feet, 2-car garages.
Yes.
And did you hear that at least 12 homes will have 2-car garages?
Yes.
And that vinyl and soffits would be allowed in gables, I'm sorry, vinyl siding would be allowed in soffits and gables only?
Yes.
And lowering our number to 32 units?
Yes.
And having the one access to Elrod Road on the southernmost point?
Yes.
And do you agree to all those?
Yes, we do. I'd like to point out the item number 4 regarding the vinyl. We use the verbiage from the original Stagner Farm proposal, which was a little convoluted, and in order to make this a more, at least in paper, certainly a more attractive facility, we wanted to go ahead and address the vinyl issue. That's the reason that was in to begin with. I would envision this to look something like the units across from Indian Hills. I think it's Indian Ridge, perhaps. With regard to the roundabout, as someone who has a decent investment out Elrod Road, I would encourage Public Works to address that, whether we do this project or not. We did not build the roundabout. We basically provided the land and money for it.
I hope I didn't insinuate that you did.
No.
I was trying to see if there was something in this entrance, in your entrance, that could help you and this, but given that it's already done, I understand completely.
And candidly, that was part of the arrangement when we were asked to and agreed to acquire the land, to then donate the land for the roundabout. It was with this concept in mind, so that's why it was designed that way. But if I had influence over Public Works, I would certainly
I would say it's in your best interest to see that happens,
Yes.
just because you're going to have a piece of property there as well.
And Chris mentioned this, but I was talking to a gentleman outside, a man I'm an acquaintance with, and he was commenting that he thought this cul-de-sac, as I'll call it for now, was going to eventually access McKenzie Meadows. And there may be some confusion from a picture. I assured him that was not in the design, not in the plan. So that's not the case. He also had some concerns that this development would somehow impact his HOA dues at McKenzie Meadows. This will have a separate HOA, be autonomous to the McKenzie Meadows HOA. And Chris mentioned the drainage easement, the water retention. When we started this development several years ago, I believe we, in order to be good neighbors, granted some easements that were for the benefit of McKenzie Meadows relative to that retention basin. We think this will be a very attractive upscale development, and frankly, we think it'll be add to the value of the surrounding locations.
Thank you, Mr. Vitale.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Davenport or Mr. Vitale?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions. The first one I want to direct to the staff. What is the average size of twin homes? Is it 1,000 square feet?
Well, it varies by the home plan that is selected by the developer. So in this scenario, I believe the minimum for the twin homes, not the single-family detached homes in orange, is 1,000 square feet. And that's exclusive of the garage space. So that's what they're proposing for this development, but it can vary just depending on the lot size and the floor plan. Yeah.
Second question is probably to Mr. Vitale or Chris.
Art will have Chris answer it.
As far as the roundabout, are there other issues other than issues that Mr. Graham has addressed related to that roundabout, maybe accidents or anything of that nature that has created an issue?
Commissioner Graham brought up is the one that I've heard the most, and I've just, because we donated the land, I've asked people if it's made it better out there. And years ago, I lived down Three Springs Road and would drive in that area all the time. The only issue that I hear about is that issue.
Okay.
And I do not know, other than for budgetary reasons, why the Public Works didn't choose to create that lip like they did off on Shive Lane.
I mean, Commissioner Starks, I'm not aware of any. The only I think what I can say to that question is, all that Public Works asked of us was to limit the entrances to what we've proposed. Because at least in their view, the functionality of the roundabout continues to work, doesn't affect it in a way that doesn't work, if that makes sense. If you could imagine too many spokes going into the center of the wheel, at some point the roundabout wouldn't be big enough. But this is fine according to them, so.
And I'll add this just from a layperson's perspective. In my view, it has improved that intersection because it was a very awkward intersection. It was almost like a road stuck in a curve. And so it has alleviated that confusion in my view. It's just that it didn't turn out exactly as planned.
At least Saturday when I left Jody Richards for my daughter's basketball game, that thing was traffic was moving through there really.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't hauling a boat, Commissioner.
I was going to say, I haven't driven my
Or trailer or
Yes.
anything like that. I
Okay,
understand.
thank you all very much. I appreciate everybody in this audience tonight. I know it's been late and you've been sitting here for a while. Is there anybody here that is opposed to this or would like to make a comment? Or do you all have a spokesperson? Yes, sir?
They're 3911 Chevy Way. I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
Main concern, which thank you for the amendments that you all made to what connects to our neighborhood. That's very gracious of you. Very much appreciated. I own the lot that is what's Lot 3, right where I believe it's the property that comes out onto Elrod that they're going to develop. I do have a little bit of a concern with, I'm sure it's going to be a 5-foot side setback, so that'll put that house probably, in the way it looks in the drawing, that'll be 5 feet off of my rear fence. You know, nobody, likes those kind of changes. There's also a 3-phase utility line and communication line that comes through there. I saw in their proposal that they're looking to have underground for that neighborhood, but I wasn't sure if they were going to reroute the overhead that comes through there, considering that's the only home that would impact for their development.
I see some heads shaking here, and I fully suspect that any overheads, Lucas, you correct me if I'm wrong, any overhead that's there currently would be rerouted?
Yes. The one going north-south on the screen would be rerouted underground. The one, I don't know if it's east-west, but left-right on the screen, that would remain overhead.
So
that's a transmission line.
So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So this line that runs here, it would stay above, it would be an overhead line.
Okay.
It's a primary, but this line here would be located underground. And if, yeah, so everything within the development would be located underground. Yes,
Okay, so there's a 25 minimum setback back on each side of that transmission line. So I'm assuming they'll have to push that home all the way to the minimum setback on the side in order to put it there to make it.
Yes, and just, we just show a 2,000 square foot box. The
Sure.
shape of that home could dictate, well, they wouldn't necessarily have to push up against it. And if, I don't think there would be any issue with making that a 10-foot side over there. That lot's really long.
Sure.
So I've got, I think it's like a 50 by 50 box on there.
Sure.
That's what that orange box is. So the home itself may be a totally different size and shape than that.
Sure, I understand, thanks, Barry.
Yeah.
The only other concern would be the exit, entrance and exit for that home, if it would truly be safe that close to the roundabout. The next thing that I would wonder is pushing it to an 18-foot setback off the street. With a single car garage, most of these people are gonna have at least 2 vehicles. A new Chevrolet truck's over 19 foot long, and sidewalks don't do much good if the vehicle's hanging out over them. And then you end up with more street parking. I believe it's a 22-foot paved drive coming in. So you put a car on the street on each side. My driveway's 24 foot wide. I can't imagine having 2 cars and trying to drive between them. They addressed a lot of the other concerns already that I had, but that's what I have.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Very good comments. Anybody else in the audience that would like to make a comment? We've talked about the traffic and the utilities, the density. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Pam Hereford. I live at 3907 Smallhouse Rd. I swear to tell the truth.
Thank
Is that
you.
what I'm supposed to say? This is my first opportunity to be at a committee or commission meeting. I like what I'm hearing more and more than where we started anyway. I've lived on, my property is the, what do you call it, the southern, is it the southern, how do you make this work? Huh? I got it? Where is it?
Give her a.
Oh, that one, okay, gotcha. My property is all along this area. We have that entire length of property. And we've been there since 1987, and I've seen everything from cow pastures to cornfields, and I'm totally okay with development and growth. That's what our community is all about. A couple of my main concern at this point, after hearing some of the changes that are proposed, is that I would love to be able to get a commitment for the barrier of that area. I know in the development plan conditions number 14, they were proposing, that's before it was the single unattached house, they were proposing a 10-foot wide barrier with 6 evergreens and 3 deciduous trees every 100 feet to protect that house from, I think, from Elrod. So I would like to ask that that be a consideration for this whole length of the housing units that we will see there in that area next to my property. There is some historical, I think, like mature trees along that area which may help, but I think because of the number of homes, the number of people, if that's not going to be a fenced area, which I assume it's not planned at this point, I would prefer to see a type of barrier with these spruce trees, deciduous trees, whatever, and starting maybe at a minimum of a 6-foot high tree that would give us some immediate coverage and not start out with a 4-footer that I might be in the nursing home by the time the 4-footer gets up to 8 feet. So maybe a minimum 6-foot tree to start that process. And I did have a question about this unit right here, number 2. Or no, that's not number 2, but that's number 4, I believe. My house is approximately right here. I'm the next house after you come past the roundabout. Will this house unit be in line with my home, or will it be jutting out closer to the main highway and the roundabout, to the point where my house is here? I will be looking into the back end of that house, because that's my side. That's my side yard right here.
Staff may be able to address that, but based on my reading of this, that home would be past the building setback for her home, correct?
To figure that out
Oh,
right
you're
now.
scaling it now?
Yeah.
I think it would be.
It would be closer to the front,
Yeah, I think
correct?
it would be past your front setback, and
Yeah.
it would not be aligned with your home, the position of your home.
That visibility would be, in my opinion, not desirable from my standpoint.
If we could get the applicant to install this landscape barrier, would that address your concern?
Possibly. Right now, there are some very tall spruce trees there that are on our property that have been a barrier, but this appears to me that this would extend out beyond my mature trees. So we are talking 30, 40-foot trees that are currently there that are more in this area right here. So this where this electric line is the back property line of that original home there. that they're going to move. And so from there, from that area up this way is, there's some mature trees that are there, but they will not extend as far up as I'm anticipating that this front edge of this home would be. And no one has addressed, are these one-story, two-story? Do we know that?
Single story.
Single story. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Am I correct about that, or am I wrong about
Are
that?
these single story? Hmm.
Typically, we limit these to 2 stories.
Two-story, okay, I'm sorry, I misspoke there. Two-story.
I don't see a restriction in the development plan conditions on building height. So.
So if we could.
Limit it to 2, because I know that they will have a gate.
There you go. Okay, so that's something that we'll ask the applicant to address in the development plan conditions.
They will be two-story?
Well, we will limit it to two-story, no more
two.
than.
Okay.
So there could be some single-story there as well.
Okay, okay.
I can't answer the question about your home. It looks like it's about 75 feet off the front property line. So I don't know if Lucas or someone is able to answer how far the newly proposed homes are set back on that
I can just
section.
visually.
I know it's just a concept with the 2-car garage requirement. I don't know how that will shake out.
It's probably not going to align, and so if we could address that with the landscape buffer, that would keep us from having to do the math here and also having to control that some way during the construction phase. I suspect fully that it would sit at least past the front of her home to some extent.
Thank you, ma'am.
And again, I would love to have that buffer that they have mentioned in DPC number 14.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is Eric Ward. I live at 4083 Dodge Street.
Yes, sir. Swear to tell the truth.
Absolutely. I do have some additional concerns. I think it hasn't been addressed, I don't believe, but I do think that there's a concern among all of the Mackenzie Meadows residents about the square footage of these twin homes, 1,000 square feet. That's considerably smaller than anything around it. I share the concerns that the gentleman already spoke about with the setback and the parking in that area. I have 2 other concerns. I do think with the roundabout, I think lighting is an issue. About every other week, somebody drives right through the middle of that roundabout, and you can see the tracks in the grass where they drive right through it. As a matter of fact, about a month ago, somebody drove right through the middle of it and took the fence out on the other side. So, and a lot of that happens at night, and it's very dark there. Unless there's cars in there with headlights, you really can't see. So I think that is an issue that probably needs to be addressed at some point. The 2 lots, is this a pointer?
There's a silver button on top.
There, got it. So this lot right here is undeveloped, this lot right here is undeveloped. This lot right here is an extremely large lot. It's probably a $100,000 lot. So if somebody's going to build a house on that lot, it's probably going to be $500,000 to $750,000, I would imagine. It would concern me a lot to have this house right here with the driveway right on the property line of that lot, and how that's going to affect the value of that piece of property right there and this piece of property right here. That concerns me a lot.
Sir, can you tell me what lot number that is that you're?
I can't tell, but I know these two lots right here they've not been developed yet.
I appreciate your comments, but values, this commission doesn't get it.
I understand. I'm just expressing
okay.
concerns.
All right.
Okay? There's also some confusion, I think. I'm the HOA president, and we were told that this area right here had been deeded to the HOA, and we've been maintaining this area around the retention basin. We've been mowing it, and so I would just want to know who's going to be responsible for maintaining that area. Who does that area belong to? Does it belong to Mackenzie Meadows? Does it belong to this new subdivision and who's going to be responsible, because we've been taking care of it.
Chris, was it deeded or is it an easement?
It's an easement.
Yeah.
And the HOA needs to look at the language of the easement and the maintenance language.
Okay, yeah, it's an easement that they've given you access to.
For water retention.
For water retention.
I think those are the only concerns that haven't been already addressed.
Thank you, sir. Good comments. Yes, sir. So we've talked about the, and we'll address it with the applicant here in just a minute. We've talked about the barrier, the roundabout, the question about the square footage of the house. We've talked about the height of the new homes. I think we've covered a lot of it, the roundabout. Is there any other comments regarding from the audience regarding this development? So, Mr. Davenport or Mr. Vitale, you've heard.
All right, so let me talk about the driveway first, because this gets a little bit complicated. I've had about 3 or 4 of these PUDs with this same design, 18-foot front setback. And what's not readily obvious is the 18 front setback is to the property line. And in a development like this where you've got double sidewalks, you have additional space. So Lucas was doing the math. The distance from the front setback of the garage and the back of the sidewalk will be 21.5 feet, at least. And the reason why they're 18 feet is because, I remember when we did stagger the first time, that's just about as close as you can get and still park a car in that space, because it ends up giving you 21.5 feet. The other thing about the sidewalk language, or the driveway language, is it's 18 feet wide. Even if there's a one-car garage, all the driveways have to be 18 feet wide. And the reason for that is so you can park 2 cars next to each other in the driveway. So we think the way these are designed, the reason those restrictions read that way, are to allow for 2 cars on every home to be parked in the driveway without obstructing the street or the sidewalk. We do need, I think, Rachel, to add that no structure will exceed 2 stories.
Dpc number 2.
Yes. And I think just add that to the end of it. And then Lucas told me about the lighting. The one gentleman had concerns. It's actually stubbed out under the roundabout. It wasn't installed for the same reasons. So I mean, I'm throwing shade on the county. I don't mean to, but it is there for future. It was built that way.
So Chris, I also assume that your applicant is going to install street lighting inside the subdivision as well, correct?
Would be the intent, absolutely.
Okay. So that's going to add some lighting
Yes.
to the area in addition to the stubbed out lighting that they've got. Well, we can only assume planned, correct? Yeah, okay.
Last thing was the lady's question on the.
On that, we're certainly agreeable to put a barrier. Candidly, I would rather visit the site with the lady and see what might be best there. If you have mature spruce trees farther back, we might be willing to do something up front where there's less separation. And if we did 500 feet of trees, we'd want to do, plant evergreens and let them grow. We wouldn't want to put in 6-foot high trees that are certainly
It's
more
about
expensive.
500 feet along that property line.
But if we could find something that, if we're going to spend $5,000 or $6,000 doing it, but it's smarter to spend $5,000 or $6,000 up front than it is to spread it out the whole way. Yeah.
Is it, so Mike, you guys will take care of the concerns of the barrier of that side? Okay.
So how do we word this, knowing that Mike is going to meet with the homeowner? We need to put something in here, but
Or to
also
wordsmith that.
Also,
you could put in there that we'll do the 500 feet plants unless, I'm sorry.
Unless y'all change.
Ms. Pam says we can do something else.
Is there a way, staff, that I could get a letter? I mean, you know, I appreciate what Mike's trying to do. But my job and Hamp's job and your all's job is to put something in here that can be enforced later at a permitting stage or whenever. And, so.
If it makes it easier, we can say we'll do that, but I'm not sure that serves her needs as best as we can.
I'm comfortable simply saying that we're going to put in the landscape barrier, and as long as the two parties are in agreement that they're going to coordinate where they might add some additional density to address her concern with the setback, I think that's a great idea. I don't know that we can legislate that, though. I think we're going to have to just put in the language and trust that the two parties will work out that placement issue. Are both of you in agreement with that? Yeah. Yeah? Okay.
We'd like to cap it at $5,000 or $6,000 cost.
Good. All right. Okay.
But certainly, if it makes the neighbor happy, we're going to be there for a while.
Hamp, do you have any suggestions?
Could add a development, plant one more and say developer agrees.
How about the developer agrees
Whatever
with
boundary.
$6,000 budget for
along, and we need to say
Screening along the northern property line.
yeah, that's what I was trying to.
up to a $6,000 budget.
In cooperation with the adjoining property owner.
Yes.
Possibly.
They might be handwritten.
I don't
How
have
about-
a problem
how-
with this particular application doing that, but to set that precedent, I don't want to
For
start
the record,
collecting receipts.
I tried to
and having
get Ben
keep
to
up.
speak about this. I kept looking over there. I kept looking.
He was being quiet. He was waiting to see if we were going to address it ourselves.
So how would we address that, Ben?
Sounds like Ms. Hereford agrees to trust Mr. Vitale to do what he has said tonight he wants to do without putting it in the development plan condition.
Right.
My only concern about that is we will sell these lots, and the new owner may not be as upright a citizen as I am.
Wow.
But you're
Well,
gonna
why don't we go ahead and why don't we put in there before the lots are sold that y'all have made the barrier?
No, I'm saying we'll do it, but new owner could take it out if they want to.
Well,
If there's not a.
or she can allow it on her property. The planting could be on your property. Planting.
Trees, would you prefer the trees be on your
Because
property?
what he's saying is if they go on the other property, they could take them out.
Yeah, that might be an option. I
Okay.
I'll need to look at it.
We're happy to work with you. I just don't want to commit to something, sell a lot, the next thing I know, the trees are chopped down and
I get
someone
that.
says, didn't Vitale say there were
You know, and
trees?"
that's actually a concern that you don't normally hear, Mike.
I can't believe I came up with that.
We can always say if Mike doesn't do it right,
Let's-
we'll never pass anything.
So Ben, let's address this and.
So what if we did something along the lines that a signed agreement between the two parties outlining a landscape barrier shall be presented, what did you say? At a pre-construction conference?
In the absence thereof, the developer shall construct a 10-foot wide buffer containing no fewer than 6 evergreen trees and 3 deciduous trees per 100 foot along the northern property line.
Yeah, that gives you a bare minimum.
East.
The Nashville Rd property.
But that way,
Yeah.
if there's no agreement, then we put the buffer in that we put in other places.
Okay.
That's good.
I like
That's good. Yeah, that's good, Chris.
You agree with that, Mike?
Yes.
Okay.
Already done, Mike.
Fair enough.
Already done.
Been very generous.
Oh, wait, now, what did I do?
Okay. In respect to everybody's time, are there any other
We were talking about the current overhead transmission line.
Yes.
It says all utilities will be located underground.
It needs to say all new utilities shall be located underground. And for the record, we do, Ms. Hereford, is that right? In talking with the developers, when this comes underground, you'll have the ability to get underground service if you desire that.
To put it underground at my place.
Yeah.
Okay, all minds in agreement. Could it call for a motion, please, for
Make the motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and condition upon the general development plan docket number 2022-10ZCO. Based on the testimony and documents presented at the public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request this motion include the summary of evidence and testimony presented to the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Volker,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Starks,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. Motion passes and goes to Warren County Fiscal Court.
May I say something, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
We have witnessed tonight collaborative effort between the developer, the attorney, and the opposition. And that's the way it's supposed to work. Come together, talk about it, and come to some kind of consistent conclusion that's agreeable to everyone. I just want to make that statement.
Thank you, sir.
I think it's a statement that's certainly worth making.
Ben, do we have any new business? Okay, thank you all for your patience tonight.
Meeting adjourned.
Meeting's adjourned.